This is Bloody F.Mess, and I'll see you at the Tampa Morgue.
What's up? This is Tony, and you're listening to the Tampa Morgue, episode number 51. And as always, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Ed Webb. How you doing, Ed?
Mr. Anderson, what's going on, brother?
Doing good, man. Just we had a busy week. We've done a couple shows this week, and we're finally winding down a little bit. Tonight should be a good show, man. I've known this guy for a while. I'm actually, I remember. I think I was like 14 when I first heard his band. I picked up it's a 1990 record they did called Sixth Grade Field Trip. I got it at the Boardwalk in Seaside. It was an album that was it came out on this label called Black and Blue Records out of Rhode Island. It was released with another band because I don't know if you remember, Ed. I don't know if you ever saw that where they put like two bands on one CD.
Yeah.
And Black and Blue did that, and they put a band from Belmar who I was already familiar with from their demos called Northwinds, a thrash metal band from Jersey. And actually, Dave Stein, who played in that band, I actually ran into him when Generic Christ played in Puerto Rico. He was in the band Infernion, which was really crazy because I was like talking to one of his guys, and I was like, yeah, I grew up listening to this band called Northwinds, and I had no idea Dave was in the band. So that was kind of cool, man. But yeah, back then they had the two bands on there, and it was Northwinds, and the other one was the Sixth Grade Field Trip album from Bloody Mess and the Skabs. And I think when I first heard it, I didn't know what the hell I was listening to. It was completely different than the thrash metal. It was totally different, totally raw. But jammed out a lot. I followed Bloody's career, eventually became friends with him. I'm glad he's going to be joining us tonight. But yeah, it's weird that we're on 51 episodes, and we look at some of the people we've had on now. Like we had Chris on from Autopsy, and I have to say, man, that was definitely a highlight, I think.
For sure. Plus, he's a cool guy, and we've known him a long time. So, it kind of changes the dynamic a little bit, but it's still, you get these guys on and you look at their careers and you're just like, holy shit, man, they fucking been
Yeah,
doing this for a long time.
and it is easier, don't you think, when we have some of the guys we have on and we've either played with them or we've run in the same circles. It is kind of like, it does, the show really flows. I've always noticed that. Your history of touring and jamming with some of these bands. Even when we talked to Gene the other night, we had Gene on from Angel Corpse, Perdition Temple. That, I think we talked to him for probably 2.5 hours. I think, it was a 3-hour episode. But even your history goes back into all those guys, so it's kind of a cool thing, man. I have to say, especially when we get people that we know on.
Yeah, for sure. And it's weird how a lot of that stuff always intertwines back to the old people storage.
Yeah, padlock storage over
man,
here.
yeah, there's people storage, man, fucking orange and orange hell. But it's just weird when you hear so many people who actually were around in those days and were there to witness the mayhem that happened in that fucking little area. I mean, dude, you're talking, it's not that big of a place. I mean, it's a storage place, it's probably got maybe a couple hundred storage units, but they weren't all bands, but it seemed like everybody who was in there in the early days. And yeah, man,
Videos of it on YouTube, which we were talking
it's
about,
everywhere.
the Nocturnus videos, or I remember you would pull into those places. I mean, because I was in there later than you, all those places, but I remember you'd pull in on a Friday night, man, and there was bands jamming. It was just a good vibe, and you don't really appreciate it, I don't think, as much when you're in your teens, or you start, early 20s or whatever. You kind of take it for granted. But it's a cool thing, man, when you get like 3 or 4 bands, especially, like you're talking about, like, what, Morbid Angel practicing in one corner, and Eulogy practicing in one.
Asheron was there,
Asheron.
Nocturnus, Monstrosity. I mean, it was who's who was in there. Torturers, even bands
I
that
think
weren't
Iced Earth
death
was in
metal.
there too, right? We were
I
talking
don't, I
to.
don't know. That they might have been. I wasn't into them back then, so I'm not really sure. But there was a lot of bands in there, even local bands, nobody bands. Disincarnate was in there. So yeah, it was a who's who, and it was really cool because back then you were there 5 days a week. You were practicing because you didn't do anything else. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
went to shows and you practiced. You wanted to be in a band. That was what we did when we were young. Even when I wasn't in a real band, before my eulogy, situation popped up. I was doing a band with obviously Dave Sawyer and Mikey Goat Fan, who doesn't really play anymore, and this drummer, this guy, and got the gig with Eulogy, and then from then on, I never stopped. That was like full tilt for me after Eulogy. It was like it never stopped. Like a lot of people stopped playing in bands since 1996. I've like
Kept on doing
95,
it, man.
96, man. I've just been full tilt football. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's that whole lifer phrase. It's kind of like true. I mean, even I mentioned the last episode that we'll be playing Swarmfest in Tampa on November 23rd. And I'm excited, man. I haven't played a live show in a while. I still been recording, as you know. We've done a bunch of stuff together, and but it's in you. You just don't. I never understood kind of when someone's like, "Yeah, man, I just didn't want to do it anymore." I never, I get frustrated sometimes. Sometimes you need a break, right? Like we know with bands we've been in, sometimes when it's time to call it a day for a while, but I never just want to give it up completely. It's
No,
not in me. I grew up listening to records, and it's what it's the one thing I love. And I think you're the same way. We've all been doing it. There's a lot of guys, especially in Tampa scene. You see a lot of dudes. Sometimes we mention that band Precipice, and they keep on going. Like some of these bands have been around for a long fucking time.
oh yeah, and there's some that we thought would never be gone, and they're gone. So it's either one or the other. Either you're in for the long haul, or you're new dudes in a new band with a new name. That's
Yeah.
pretty much how it works.
I was surprised actually. I kind of expected that when we were talking to Gene the other night, and I asked him about Angel Corpse. They're done. That's it. He
Yep,
said that's, and
done.
I'm pretty sure it's you kind of get that feeling with that band. That's probably it. You know, um,
It seems like there's certain, and I can understand that. There's stuff that I've done that people want to, some people want to bring back to the front, and I'm just not interested. Not under that name. I'll do it under something else, or I'll do whatever, you know, but I will not. I just because you know, when you start something with somebody and you do it, and then all of a sudden you're the last man standing, or there's two of you, and it just, you have a revolving door of just people. I don't know. It just kills the vibe for me. You know, that's why it's really cool that we got the OG lineup back together. Because for a while, you know, when Guy left, it was just, even Chris, you know, this drummer, that drummer, this drummer, that drummer, this guitar player. You know, it never stops. And it's like, and it was never the same. That's the problem.
It was definitely time for a break when it happened, and it's probably the best thing for the band. And
I agree.
I think that's what kept the band. I think if it would have kept on going, it probably would have crashed.
Oh, it would have fucking been like an atom bomb.
Yeah, no, totally.
Things, everything happens the way it's supposed to. That's how I see it. And you being stuck, there for, I mean,
almost
you were
3
there
years.
for a
I've been
while.
in Eastern Europe, man. I've been 2 years plus. I mean, but that's what I'm
we
saying.
We wouldn't have started this.
Yeah, exactly. This came out of that.
Yeah, because our wives got tired of us talking on the phone
about music all the time. Yeah,
they told us to go in another room and just fucking do something.
Yeah, I try to tell my wife the musical stuff, and she says, take us somewhere else. So now we did, and we started a podcast. And and with this, with the podcast, we've had tons of, we've had a lot of extreme bands, or we had a lot of death metal bands, or we had some black metal bands, we just have heavy metal bands, new wave British heavy metal bands, horror people. And tonight, it's the first punk musician we really have had on. And it's someone that I listened to growing up. And like I said, I've known him for a while. And I know the guy just has lived a crazy life, man. And he's honest about it. He's still playing. So a lot of people who are going to listen to this interview, they might not be familiar with Bloody. Some people will be. And he's not an extreme metal artist at all, but I think, he's been around for a long time in the punk scene, and he's been around the metal guys. He's just, like I said, he's an interesting guy. So I think it's going to be really cool. And it's it's our first real punk thing, basically first punk rock guy we've had on the show, and we plan on having more. So it's just happened to wind up being this time. I talked to Bloody on the side, and I asked him, I said, hey man, why don't you come on the show? He has a radio show, which we'll talk about and stuff. He has obviously he's done stuff with G.G. Allin. There's a lot of stuff that he's done, man. So I'm looking forward to talk to him. And Ed, before we get him set up, what I'm going to do is, anything else you want to say before we get Bloody on?
Nope. I got nothing.
There you go.
Got nothing.
There you go. Florida Panthers won a Stanley Cup, man. So,
good for them.
Yeah, that was a tough fucking team this year.
Good for them.
But we're gonna play. We're gonna get Bloody set up, and we're gonna play the track "Skabs Seduction" off the '94 Hungover and Stoned record. When we get back, we'll be back. We'll have Bloody on with us, and we'll be back on the Tampa Morgue with Bloody F.Mess.
Bastards of destruction, on the edge and don't look back. Endless road to which you wander, letting by the cannon wheels turn. Vaporize and liquor rage, motion fingers fall from behind, smashing rhythm, blinding fury, spreading sickness into the masses. Spinning space out of control, falling bubble bloody mess. United States of rhythm, building your head to the bottom. Dying of the price of freedom, scars of the melody flesh, robbing temple bleeding gums.
Bloody, what's up, man? We finally got you on. We had like we've all been like an hour. We've been trying to get everything set up, but we finally got it working, man. How you doing, dude?
Doing good, man. Technical difficulties are not my forte, but we overcame that obstacle.
Yeah, man, we got you on. It's glad to have you on. It's been a while. You know, I think I talked to you off the show, but I mean, I know you got a lot of shit going on. You just put out a record. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, man. But in general, man, everything's been going good with you. Where are you located at? You're up in Portland now?
Nope, I'm down in Ashland, Oregon, at the opposite end of the state from Portland. So I'm about 15 miles above the Northern California border.
Okay. Yeah. So what's your guys' summers like over there?
See, it's in the 90s here.
Oh, not bad. I say I'm over Eastern Europe right now, so we're about like 70s, 70, 80s hot here. So
Oh yeah, it's super hot here, bro.
yeah. And you're born and raised in Peoria, right?
I was.
In Illinois. So that's like what 2.5 hours away from south of Chicago.
Yep, 2.5 hours south of Chicago, 2.5 hours north of St. Louis.
What was it like growing up? Like, what do you remember? Like, as a kid, not even through the whole musical eyes or anything like that. Just like through a kid's eyes. What do you remember about growing up there?
Just mostly being out in nature most of the time.
Yeah, you're still into nature and stuff. Ever since I always know you're into that.
Oh, absolutely.
I said, and your mom and dad, your mom was a rock fan, right? And she was
Big
like, she collected
time.
records and stuff.
Yeah, she was a hardcore rock and roll person. Yeah, she's the one that would get up every day before we even made breakfast. There would be a record on the record player.
Nice. And like, how would you explain your household you grew up in? Like, if you had to like kind of sum it up.
Basically, my mother playing music pretty much all of the time, and me hearing it and absorbing it. And other than that, it was a pretty chill household.
I said, do you actually remember the first music you heard that kind of like, no matter what it was, that kind of caught your ear, like whether it be like the Beatles or whatever, something that just stuck with you right away as a kid?
Yeah, you hit it on the head, man. The Beatles, and then like the Dave Clark Five, a lot of the British Invasion stuff, and a lot of 50s rock, 60s rock,
I said,
pop, a lot of pop music.
what was the first record you ever owned?
First record, I don't remember, but I remember having a little kid's turntable, where you put the little needle on and it just starts playing. And I had a little carrying case with records, including Beatles records, because I remember the Apple label, and that was probably when I was about 7, 8 years old.
And you also Kiss had a big impact on too. You got into Kiss at a young age too.
Yeah, when I was about 9 or so, I got hardcore into Kiss, and I think the Hotter Than Hell album was my first Kiss album. That was the one I really, really loved the most for a long time.
And as a kid, did you kind of kept to yourself and stuff, or were you like, you kind of
It was a mixture, man. Most of the friends that I had would be out in the creeks every day, building tree houses and running out to the woods every day in the creeks. But then there was a different part of my life where I was a little bit older, and I would mostly spend my time in my bedroom 24/7 reading like 3 or 4 books a month and devouring, music.
Nice. Oh, in 1980, your friend got a bass, so your mom, she got you a mic stand, and that's pretty much how it all kind of started out, the performing part of it?
Yep, that's when we started partying, and that's when I started smoking weed in about 1979, and then all the alcohol abuse started about a year later, and yeah, party is an understatement.
I was going to say that too, because obviously, whoever's listening to the show, we're going to get into some of the shit. You've had a crazy, crazy rock and roll life, I guess you would say. But I do want to mention that you quit drinking 12 years ago, right?
Maybe 13 or so. Yeah, I don't think I drank. I haven't gotten drunk since 2013.
And the first time you got drunk was with your Captain Bill, was your buddy's name, from Detroit?
Yeah, man, Poison Bee, aka Captain Bill.
Nice. And so I know, and I wanted to mention that before we go through the show, because I know there's some crazy times from your history. So I did want to mention that you've been sober for 13 years now. So that's awesome. And so some of the records that really changed your musical path, what was it like? The Dead Kennedys, Motorhead, like what would be some examples that you would have where you started noticing, from the Beatles to this?
Well, stuff like Sabbath and stuff like, The Doors, but of course that's mainstream music really, even though it's whatever, it's good and it's rebellious, but it's mainstream as you can get. But outside of that, I went to see Ozzy in the Blizzard of Oz with Randy Rhoads in 1980, and Motorhead was the opening act. And I'd heard of Motorhead and read about them, but I'd never actually witnessed or heard that kind of shit live. And it blew my mind, dude. It just blew my mind. I was just like, what in the holy fuck? I've never heard anything this heavy. And so Ace of Spades was the tour they were on, opening for Blizzard of Oz. And before that, like I say, I liked heavy music and all the rock, but I started getting into exploring hardcore at that very moment. All the new wave of British metal, more punk rock and things like that. But Motorhead was a pretty heavy experience for a young dude in like sophomore in high school.
Yeah, and you were like a metalhead, what, from like 78, 79 to 83, I think I had heard you mention before.
Yeah, I was, and probably by even later than that, because I I often get my timelines completely wrong. I actually sang for a metal band in '85 called Emerald for a brief period of time. We were doing like Motorhead and Saxon, Sabbath, Metallica covers, but I insisted that we do some punk rock, at least 2 songs a set. And the drummer of that band was no offense if he sees this, but he was just not having it. The other guys were cool, but he was like, fuck that punk rock. Because in the Midwest back then, it was either punk or metal. There's no such thing as somebody that liked both. And I was one of those guys that liked both. And I did not fit into like any crowd. So I was like, fuck you guys and your metal. I like it, but we're going to do some goddamn punk rock or I'm out. And they wouldn't let me. So I quit the band.
And the name Bloody Mess. So that was given to you by a friend of yours, Kevin Rotten Brashear. I don't know if I'm saying the last name right. And that's tied to a Sex Pistols song.
Yeah, the song "Bodies." It's about a girl getting strapped down and getting an abortion, I believe, and it says "fucking bloody mess." And then we were all drunk on whiskey, and he's like, "Yeah, that's your nickname," and I'm like, "I got to be called fucking." So we just was joked around and made a play on words, and decided to call myself Bloody Mess, and then we added the F with a period just to be formal for fun, instead of bloody fucking mess, Bloody F.Mess.
Didn't you? You wound up opening up for the Sex Pistols once, didn't you?
I did, yeah, on the reunion tour, members of 1096 and Beautiful Bert
Beautiful
and
Bird.
myself. That was awesome. Yeah, it was an amazing experience.
And the first band you were in was 83, 84, a band called Chips Patrol. You met the Steppy brothers, right? And they had to put an ad up for a singer.
Yeah, they did. I still actually have the original ad too. And they had moved from Chicago. They were in a band called Negative Element in Chicago, and the bass player was in Rights of the Accused. And of course, Rights of the Accused guitar player ended up being the guitar player for White Zombie.
Huh. And you guys played what with the Necros, MIA back then?
Yeah, that Chips Patrol actually turned into the band. We changed our name to Unaccepted, but we did gigs with the Necros, MIA, Annihilate, a lot of really cool bands.
You guys played shows to Chicago, Springfield, and Peoria.
Yeah, Charleston, Illinois, Champaign, Illinois, Bloomington, Peoria, a lot of parties, Peoria Heights, Illinois, garage parties. It was cool.
And so you got kicked out of the band at the end of the day?
At the end of the day, yeah, we were at a gig opening for the band MIA in Champaign, Illinois, '84, and I met a couple of cute girls there, and I wanted to hang out with the chicks, not a bunch of skater boys. So I fucking left the little punk house, and we went to the record store. I ended up dating one of the girls who was a big punk promoter in the town named Sheila Reed, and then about a week after I left, she called. She goes, "Hey, man, all of our friends that were at the punk house when you and I went to the record store, they were telling everyone that they fucking couldn't stand you and not to talk to you and that it was your last gig." And I'm like, I wondered why those pricks were all a bunch of fucking assholes to me that day. And then, I got even years later, though. That's another story, though. In 1985, we ended up putting out a recording, and I didn't put any of their names on it. I changed all their names to like Jesus Christ on drums, Budweiser on bass, and like another weird name. And so when the record came out, I was like, "Yeah, here's your copy." And they're all like, "Where's our name?" I'm like, "Where's my band? Fuck you guys."
In '85, you also start up Bloody Mess and Hate after being kicked out. Now, that was a joke band at first, right?
Well, the funny thing is, the bigger joke is that the band was made up of the same band that kicked me out of the other one. It was the Steppy Brothers.
You guys, the first show for you guys was actually with Gigi. Was that the first Hate show? Was with Gigi Allin?
It was, yeah. It was Hate with Gigi Allin and Caustic Defiance, July 31st, 1985 in Creve Coeur, Illinois at the VFW Hall.
Oh wait, yeah. So this is that's a pretty famous show, right? This is I guess the first show where Gigi shit on stage, basically. And
It is. I bought him the X. I bought the X-Lax for him, man.
And didn't he take him too early before the show? Like,
he took it way early. We were at my apartment for a couple days partying and blah, blah, blah. And we were getting ready for the show that night. And me and him walked up to the store called Convenient. And I bought him the X-Lax. And he ate way more than you're supposed to. And he was sitting around for hours, literally squeezing his ass cheeks together, bitching to me like, God, I've got to shit so bad. This sucks. And I'm like, just go fucking shit. You know, what are you? What a weirdo. And he's like, no, man, I got to hold it in for the show. And I'm like, this guy's going to fucking do this. And everyone was tripping because, you know, it was unheard of. We were just like, what do you mean you're going to shit on the stage? You fucking weirdo. But he did.
It wasn't. The one band was weren't they a straight edge band or something that you booked on that show?
They were totally straight edge, and it was a couple of the guys from the Steppy Brothers, and they had a couple other dudes. But turns out years later they weren't straight edge. It was bullshit. The singer was a big pothead, and the bass player partied, whatever. But I could care less. But that's the truth. Back then it was a big deal because they'd give me shit about being a big party and drug guy. Yet on the side, a couple of them were doing just the same. So yeah, straight edge, straight edge.
When that first happened with Gigi, how did it was because the club was a VFW, right? It was owned by a bunch of old guys.
It was a VFW hall, and there was like 3 or 4 guys from the VFW that were at the show the entire time, sitting at the bar in the same room we all were in, and they were just pissing themselves just because Gigi's walking around for like 2 hours before the show with a pair of boots on, a jock strap that says "Eat Me," and that's it. And they were like, this guy's got to put something on. They were freaking out. I had a big, huge mohawk. I had a shirt that said hate. We had a drag queen that was with us, from a transsexual from Chicago. We had all these weird fucking characters. These old men didn't know what hit them, man. And they're like, he's got to put something on, goddammit. And he's like, my fucking dick and balls are covered up. Fuck you guys. And they're like, no, he's got to put something on or you guys got to get the fuck out of here. So he puts on this big robe, right? And the robe's got a big, huge dick and balls drawn on the back.
Hey, the same one you have. Yeah, that's yes. Were they pulling the equipment out? I read something like they were pulling the equipment out. They were freaking out, the owners.
What happened was the minute we all played, it was okay. Then the next band, or Caustic played, we played, and when Gigi got up there, there was no band, obviously, so he had a cassette tape. And my friend Kevin, the same guy that helped give me my nickname, there was a boom box, a little cassette tape boom box. We had it plugged into the wall. We had a microphone that was hooked up to something, and he just had that microphone, and he'd put it up to the boom box so you could hear the music project over the crowd, which was basically Gigi had went into the studio and done all of the instruments, drums, bass, guitar, and recorded an entire set of music. We played it over the PA, and Gigi did the vocals live. I think he did "I'm Gonna Rape You," and I Want to Never Be, and Teacher's Pet, maybe. And then I think maybe the third song, or even the second song, he couldn't handle it any longer. And they were all freaking out on him. And he was just being he's smashing the mic into his head and rolling around. Next thing you know, he took a shit on stage. And the whole place immediately smelled like just the worst smell you could ever imagine. I mean, the whole place started freaking out, screaming. It was like an Old West movie. Everyone's running towards the door. And I looked back at the old men, and they were completely, their eyes were bugging out of their head. They started running towards Gigi. And I remember distinctly, one of them said, "You piece of shit." And they started running towards him. In the process, they're grabbing my PA speakers and like chucking them down, through the place. I'm like, "You motherfuckers." And I'm like screaming at him, like, "Don't grab my equipment, you fucking old man." And Gigi sees these guys coming for him, and they're going to beat the shit out of him. So what's he do? He picks up a bunch of shit and rubs it on his chest. And I've got a photo. It's out there online somewhere. And he's actually disgusted. He looks down at his own chest, and he's got a look of like, ugh. And that was the only photo in the world of Gigi acting and showing his true emotions. Because I don't care who you are, rubbing shit on your own chest can't feel good. And
Wow.
he was freaking out. The old man at that point stopped right in their tracks, which was he was genius because he knew if I did that, they're not going to touch me. So he rubbed it
Yeah.
all over himself in order to not be fucked with. So
It's
we
actually
made an
very
exit
smart.
for the door because these old men were grabbing equipment, throwing it out the door. We were tripping. We were trying to grab gear, throw it in the back of a fucking station wagon. And then what happened was everyone's out in the parking lot. It's like utter chaos. Well, these guys are calling the cops who are like a minute away, right? This is a town of like, 10,000 people or less. And the next thing you know, we get in my buddy's car. Where literally the front of our car is at the driveway pulling out right as the front of a cop car is pulling in, literally. And they didn't know we were in that car because they didn't know who did it. And we got out of there and got away.
There you go. Yeah, so it's a crazy story. And so is it true that you used to drop like 10 hits of acid when you used to play back then too?
Who?
You.
You know what? I used to do that regularly. I only tripped on acid, I think, 2 or 3 times on stage. That was always a very bizarre experience. I could tell you some stories. But no, I was a regular acid head, and I'm not ashamed to say it. But I was a huge user of LSD as a teenager, and I would do like usually about 8 hits at a time. Yeah, never 10, usually about 8. But I remember there was times I would do it for days on end. I would get sheets from San Francisco mailed to me from these deadheads, and this shit was the real shit. And I was dealing it at the time as a teenager and stuff, and even as a young adult for years and years. That's how I made a living, man. You buy these sheets of acid for like 50, $100, and you make thousands off of them. It was crazy. And I was living high on the hog and tripping balls all the time. I only had one bad trip though, and that was when I stayed up for 3 days drinking and tripping balls. And every time I'd slightly come down, I'd eat like 3 times the amount of, like, I must have eaten dozens of hits that day. And finally, I had complete psychosis. And at like 6 in the morning on the third day, after taking cabs all around to different bars for like days and just tripping balls, I started calling members of my family, insisting that there was people outside my house coming to get me, and I was going to go to prison for life because I had enough acid to put me in prison for life in my fridge, and I was freaking out on it. And it got to me to where my defenses were gone, and I called every fucking friend and family member I had and had a total nervous breakdown.
I remember I used to always hear there was a certain amount that was like total like a big felony. I forget what it was, but back when you were a kid, you always hear these amounts of hits of acid that what that is. Yeah. And you guys did the Hate Band. You guys did a 7-inch that you actually never came out, right? It was actually going to be called "I'm Glad Sid's Dead."
Yeah, it did come out. It came out in 2018 on vinyl on a label called Puke and Vomit Records out of California. They put out tons and tons of really legendary punk records. So they got a hold of me in 2018 and decided to put it out, which they did in its original form. And I also gave them, I think, 2 or 3 or 4 songs that weren't on the original I'm Glad Sid's Dead demo tape. So that's out on vinyl right now, on colored vinyl too.
Who was it? What that? Who Needs Jesus was on there. Skinhead Suck, right? I think was on there.
Yep, skinheads suck, heavy metal sucks, morals don't exist, crabs on my balls, I ain't got no friends, who needs Jesus, churchmen. Yeah, there's a lot of good ones. 20
And
thoughts in 2 seconds.
and back then with the Hate Band, you guys were there was a lot of fights at the shows and stuff. Like, how would you explain the early Hate shows to people who aren't?
Well,
Yeah.
like I said, it started out as an early joke band with the Steffi brothers and I, and it was a lot of fun opening for Gigi. And then me and 2 of the Steffi brothers kept it going for 2 more shows. We added Kevin Rotten on bass, and we ended up going to Kenosha, Wisconsin, and playing with Adrenaline OD one time, and then 1096 and US Distress. And then after that, the Steffi brothers bailed, and I decided to keep it going. So I went through about, I don't know, another 10 or 20 musicians for the next probably 2 years. And I kept Hate going. It was always chaos, always. We were getting shut down at almost every show for spitting, language, violence, you name it. It was always just, it was like the band Fear gone even worse.
Did something happen? Was a Naked Ray Gun show that year that you guys? Because you took off to Colorado. Was that the Hate Band?
Yeah, it was Bloody Mess and Hate last show we ever did. That was, I think, the summer of '87, and we played. And yeah, there was a ton of security there. They wouldn't let the kids slam dance or mosh or thrash, and it was really bizarre. And there was a ton of people, and there was like probably 50 people up front spitting on my band because we were doing Spit on My Face. And the drummer got up during the middle of the first song and left. He was just gone. I never saw him ever again. pussy.
And you moved to you moved to Colorado after that.
I did. I got sick and tired of punk rock, and I said I quit. And that was the first of like my 5 or 6 retirements from punk rock. It lasted about 8 months, and then I was super angry when I came back and decided, I'm just going to start a band that makes hate look like Mr. Rogers. So I started Bloody Mess The Skabs and began an 8-year nihilistic shock rock tenure that terrorized the Midwest. Thank God.
Yeah, and I would definitely talk. The Skabs was when I first heard this, so we're definitely gonna talk about that. When you went to Colorado, though, right? You were hanging out with hippies, and you basically I guess there was a party you got really stoned at, and pretty much told them all to fuck off.
Well, when I was in Colorado, I lived in Greeley, which is sort of between Boulder and Denver. So whenever I wanted to hang out with my punk rock friends, especially in the band Happy World, I would go to Denver because that's where all the junkies and druggies and fucking, the punk rock dudes are at. But if I wanted to hang out somewhere serene and go hiking and check out, the hippie scene, which some of my friends were there, but I would go to Boulder. And there was also the band Dead Silence, total punk rock band that I hung out with in Boulder. Carl, the bass player, was my buddy, but we would party and, get fucked up. But yeah, when I was living there, we had a party and I was hanging out with all these hippies and we were watching the Grateful Dead movie and I started drinking. And about halfway through, I realized how much I just hated this fucking entire genre. And I really wanted to just raise hell, and it wasn't out of my system at all. And my girlfriend broke up with me out there that I'd been with for 5 years, and I was just completely heartbroken. And instead of crying, I just got pissed off. And so I moved back to Illinois and started we were in the middle of watching the Dead movie, and I literally started saying, fuck hippies, fuck Jerry Garcia, and that all you guys, I wish you'd all die. You're all fucking too old, fuck off. And they all were like tripping on me at this party, and I literally packed up the next day, came back to Peoria, started the Skabs, and started raising hell and getting arrested and burning flags and doing all kinds of fun stuff.
Now, Skabs, that was formed on Halloween night?
I don't remember. The Skabs was formed in '88, but my radio show started on Halloween night of '99.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that too. I know you've been doing that for a while. And I want to go because we're 85. When we were talking about 85 before, around that time period, right? You were spending a lot of time with Gigi. So basically, you wrote him in the spring of '83, and you got a letter back pretty fast from him.
Yeah, and then we started writing pretty much very regularly for like a couple of years, and we were talking on the phone, once a week, twice a week, and I collected all his records and all that good stuff. We became real good friends. And
did you get his Addy from a 7-inch that Barry Steffi gave you?
Yeah, well, Barry didn't give it to me. It was just in his collection, and I remember seeing it, and they couldn't believe I actually liked this guy. They're like, "Oh, we hate that guy. That's just like a joke band." I thought, well, there's something to this guy. I'm going to write to the address on the back of this record, and that's what I did.
And you and Gigi had the same musical influences too back then, right?
Well, his favorite at the time was David Peel. That's the person that his big idol was David Peel, and he produced some David Peel records. And David Peel played with Gigi, and David Peel played piano for John Lennon. But Gigi was a very talented producer. He was a very talented musician. He was an above average drummer. He was very, very killer on drums. He could play really good rhythm guitar, not much of a lead player, but he was a great writer, producer, and he was into taking music seriously. But as time progressed, he too got a broken heart. And because of his chick leaving him and him losing his daughter, I put 2 and 2 together because I got to know him very closely. Me and him one-on-one hanging out and stuff like that. And he turned his sadness about being brokenhearted into fuck all women and that whole rape trip and all this, I'm going to rape you and all that. That was just him being heartbroken. That's all it was, man.
And I've heard you say too, when you were hanging out with Gigi, it was a totally different person than what you people saw on stage, right? When you guys first started hanging, because you guys were chilling a lot, right? He was staying at your apartment.
Well, yes and no. He was the same person. I mean, he was definitely living and practicing what he preached. He wasn't taking baths. He didn't give a shit about, offending people. He wanted to offend, and he couldn't find enough ways to do it. So even the day I met him, he was the real deal for sure. It's just that when I met him, he had teeth and he had all his hair and he had no tattoos, and he was just, he had started the Scumfucks a little bit earlier, maybe a year, because even in the Jabbers, he was still doing a little bit of the Scumfuck stuff that came out later before it was Scumfucks even. And when he was doing the Scumfucks, the Jabbers guys didn't even know he was doing that on the side. Gigi was a trippy guy. He even went in and in the middle of the night, went in and reproduced music, and he changed the cover of the Jabbers' first album from a band picture to just his own picture. And when it came out, the band was like, and he knew exactly what he was doing. He was totally real, but he wasn't the kind of guy that you sit around. He was like some psychopath. Not at all. His was a very carefully planned execution combined with the mental illness that his father had. So part of him was unstable. Part of it was, I'm going to get famous no matter what I got to goddamn do,
He actually tried out for the Joe Perry project.
He did.
That's a lot of people probably don't know that. And you actually, you started a GG fanzine, right?
I did. Hated in the Nation. I did 2 issues.
And he was also, back then, he was driving a laundry truck.
He was. When I first met him, he was driving a laundry truck, and he would tell me about all the women's panties that he would steal. And
that's, he, but, I think one thing that I've heard you say, which I think is crazy, which actually, it's kind of, Gigi wasn't a drug addict. You actually never saw him do drugs, right?
No, the only time we did drugs was, I think we did some muscle relaxers one time when we were in 1989. He was staying at my apartment, and we went to my ex-drummer's house, and we had the band come over, the Skabs, and we recorded with them. And that night we drank and did some muscle relaxers, or maybe speed. I think it was muscle relaxers, though, and that's it. That was the hardest drug we ever did. We were drinkers, man. I wasn't even into drugs back then either at the time. We were more into, except for the LSD. I wasn't into drugs at all, really, to be honest. Speed maybe here and there, but we were just doing muscle relaxers and drinking. He liked drinking brandy, and he liked drinking whiskey, and the cheapest stuff, the better.
And you guys did the Gigi Allin, the Hate It in the Nation, 85-86 tour. You did.
Yeah, we did
doing spoken poetry on that.
Well, the first tour he did, the Hate It in the Nation tour #1. I think he played or went to Akron, Ohio, or somewhere before that. My memory's spotty, but it was a failed attempt. He was going to do the shitting thing on stage there, but it didn't happen. And I don't even know if the show happened at all. I think it was canceled. And then when he got to Peoria to stay with me in '85, we had the gig in Creve Coeur, Illinois, at the VFW Hall, and that was the first Hate It in the Nation tour. I ended up going to jail at that show with felony drug charges, and he ended up not going to jail, and so that was bizarre. And then when I got out of jail, he had gotten to Dallas, Texas for the third gig of the tour, and he played at the Twilight Room with the Texas Nazis, and including Gene Perfect on bass. Shout out, brother Gene. But then he ended up hospitalized with blood poisoning from getting stabbed from some chick that he actually was trying to mess with in the audience or something. So I'm in jail. He's in the hospital with blood poisoning. So that turned out pretty fun.
You guys were on a Greyhound for a lot of that, right?
No, that was the second tour, the second U.S. tour we did together. We traveled. We both get Greyhound passes. You pay a certain amount of money, and you can travel on anywhere you want for like unlimited for like a month or 3 months or whatever the hell it was. And I think we had like Kentucky, Champaign, Illinois, Madison, Wisconsin, Chicago, and Peoria Heights, Illinois. And yep, I was the only one with him on that tour.
What was was there a warehouse show in Chicago where he like hit a skinhead with a microphone stand?
Yeah, what happened was I set up that show at the warehouse, and unbeknownst to Gigi, I sent a physical letter to the biggest white pride Nazi skinhead gang in Chicago called Romantic Violence. And I said, yeah, you guys think you're tough? Guess what? The toughest, craziest rocker of all time's coming to town, you fucking pussies. I dare you to come. And they did, like 30 of them. And all of a sudden, Gigi's looking around going, man, I wonder why the fuck all these fucking crazy ass skinheads are showing up. This is kind of weird. I don't usually attract this kind of crowd. I said, well, I want to tell you a little secret, pal. And I told him, he's like, you motherfucker. I can't believe you. You're going to get us fucking killed, bro. What the fuck's your bro? I go, that's the intention. And boy, that was a shit show, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, and did you ever see the Bloody? You may have seen this. There's a video out with Gigi and a cat. Have you ever seen that video?
No,
Oh, yeah,
I don't think I'd want to. I'm an
yeah.
animal lover. I don't think I want to hear
It's
about that
Gigi and
one.
a cat, a live show. It was absolutely insane. Now, did you
Well,
actually?
wasn't it a dead cat though?
Yes, it was a dead cat.
Okay, let's
Someone
make
brought
that
it to the show in a
disclaimer.
bag or something. I think, right?
I was probably at the show. Is it Chicago?
I believe so. I saw someone bought it in a bag. I think to him.
Yeah, I remember him finding a dead animal on this outside of show in Chicago and doing something on stage too with it.
Yeah. Here's
You know,
go ahead. Sorry.
if it was a live animal, I would probably I wouldn't have never even been there. But it was dead already, so whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and so here's one for that. I read this in an interview many years ago from you. Did you Gigi? Basically, I'm trying to think of the nice way to say it. A larger chick on the side of the road outside of a show. I think it was the Hate It tour. Uh, you know where I'm going with this? Gigi going down. I told you. I mean, you could plead the fifth on this too. By the way.
The oral sex thing?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I witnessed that. Yeah, I even know who the girl was.
On the side of the curb.
She was a girl that was very, very drunk, and she was the girlfriend of a guy I knew from Wisconsin. Actually, she was completely wasted. I forget her name. No, I won't say it, but she might even be dead. I think I can't remember, but yeah, she ended up taking her pants off and laid down in the alley behind the bar, and Gigi gave her oral sex in front of everybody. It's fucking hilarious.
Jesus. In 87, you and Gigi start writing together. We're writing each other, and Gigi tells you, well, you tell Gigi, right? You want him to collaborate with you on one of your songs because you had the song Scars.
Well, what I did, we were talking on the phone all the time. We were buds. So I just said, hey, he's like, what's new with the band? I said, I got this cool new song I'm writing called Scars. And he goes, oh, I like the title. Send me a tape of it or whatever. So I sent him a tape and I sent him the lyrics. And then he goes, hey, you mind if I, switch some of this up and I'll give you credit and we'll just have, use this on my You Give Love a Bad Name album. I said, yeah, it'd be great, man. No problem. Do whatever you want to do with it. So he used the name Scars, but he added, because during the live performance of it, I would say scars and then on my body. So he kept scars on my body and he added scabs on my dick.
Yeah. And you did you mentioned You Give Love a Bad Name. You actually did the liner notes for that, right?
Yeah, I did the liner notes for that one and a couple other ones. I think one at least another one.
And I thought, so what was it? He got a 2-year record deal, right? From what was it? Homestead Records, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. You got that. And he did a song. I remember he did "Beer Picnic," which was from a New York band called the Bad Tuna Experience, right? And didn't he actually ask the band for permission, and they told him no, and he still put it out anyway?
Exactly. Yeah, he did it anyway, I think.
Yeah. So, and I think like with the correction, with the liner notes and stuff. I know you've been, with Gigi, we were friends with him for a long time, and you pretty much lost interest when they started to get into the suicide. The obvious.
Well, when Gigi went to prison, he started going through a major transformation in his own. I guess it's up to public opinion. Somebody may say, he degenerated. Some people, you may say he did it on purpose. I think his mental illness had probably, in my humble estimation, he might have gotten worse. And he started this thing called the Gigi Allin Mission. And I just got tired of that whole cult, like I'm the only real rocker. And he went from being a fan of people like Alice Cooper and Iggy Pop to saying, oh, they're pussies or whatever. And I'd be like, how do you figure? Alice Cooper and Iggy Pop are awesome. And then it would be like, oh, I hate Guar. They're pussies. They use fake blood. And I'd be, yeah, but they're still awesome. And they have great songs and their shows are still totally rebellious rock and roll G. But he was just not having it. And he wanted everyone to follow him and do things his way and only worship him. And it was almost like Charles Manson, not Charles Manson-y, but you know what I mean? Like cult-like-y, sort of trying to create some kind of thing that didn't exist. I don't know. It was too stupid for me, man. Plus, I'd be honest with you, man, I didn't like the music he started doing when he started doing the death metal vocal type thing. Not my thing, man, with Gigi. I like the Scumfucks, the Cedar Street Sluts, the Jabbers, his acoustic stuff later on Punk Media. But I didn't like the stuff with the Murder Junkies.
I was going to ask you about it. So I was going to, you and Merle have no relation. You guys aren't no relationship there.
Actually, we're cool, man. We had a big falling out back in the day, but that's a long time ago. And then in 2014, hell, a band in Texas flew me out to San Antonio and they learned my songs. And a band called the Cutthroats. And I actually did a gig opening for Merle and the Murder Junkies. And since then, I've seen him twice here in Southern Oregon. I don't go to see his shows, but when he comes around, I've stopped and, seen him at my buddy's house where he's staying at. So no, I don't have any beef with Merle. He's actually been on my radio show a couple times also. So unless he's got a beef with me still, I don't have any beef with him.
Go. And you would actually, we're going to actually get to the Skabs next because I know in '87 you meet Gabby too. But you and Gigi got a fight on a staircase.
It wasn't really a fight. When I drink, which I don't anymore, I get pretty radical and I don't really give a shit about the consequences. That's why I quit. Well, we were standing in my apartment, just me and him, drinking whiskey, and we had music playing loud, and I was just completely in the mood to get insane. I couldn't believe Gigi Allin was there. We were going to do a gig the next night. So at some point, I threw him down the stairs. I literally threw him down like 20 stairs. And he was pissed. He thought, because he was exhausted from this bus trip that he'd taken, and I wasn't giving him this is the first day he's at my house. He's tired as fuck from this bus trip. He doesn't really know me that well. And when he comes running up the steps, fists flying, he starts punching me, and I'm like blocking him, and I'm laughing while he's punching. I'm like, you fucking idiot. I wasn't even trying to fight you. I was getting radical, you puss. And he's like, oh, and it was like a cartoon. He slows down. He's like, oh, I thought you were trying to start some shit, motherfucker. Don't ever push me down the stairs again. I go, dude, I didn't mean to piss you off. I thought we were having fun. So he really quickly realized this guy's fucking definitely my kind of guy, because I was never afraid of Gigi. I was always right in front of him when he performed on stage. I was never afraid. He was never a physical intimidating kind of person. But you know how it is. You don't have to be a badass to have people be afraid of you. If you're just a little crazy, most people don't want nothing to do with you. And that's what Gigi operated on, and I did too. So when I was drinking, generally I would get thrown out of a club way before he would. It happened many times. I went to jail times where he didn't, just because I was way more of a radical when I drank. When he drank, he could hold it together more, but he would still do crazy shit. But when I drank, I would black out and just do all kinds of shit and go to jail. Boom, Not him, though. He was very good at eluding the police until later.
And you were also good friends with, you're friends with Wendy Williams, right? 85, 86, 87 period?
Yeah, probably even earlier than that, actually, 84, 85, through about 87, 88. Yeah, Wendy would write to me. I would write to her, phone calls. I became friends with West Beach, who's a great friend of mine that I talk to almost every other. Yeah, we talk just about every other day. He's one of my buds, and we're doing a Plasmatics tribute right now that we're working on, and we are working on the Wax Fruit video, too, from my new album. It's got footage of Wes, plus TC Tolliver from the Plasmatics on drums on that one, too.
In 87, we were talking about you met Gabby Skab. When he came over to your apartment?
Yep, came over. His name was Mike Gabbert, and we nicknamed him Gabby Skab and started a punk band called Bloody Mess and the Skabs.
So what was the first song written for Bloody Mess and the Skabs?
I don't know if I want to say that. But,
you can. You don't have to say it. It's totally cool.
The first one for Bloody Mess and the Skabs was probably Ugly Friends, actually. The song Ugly Friends. But we had, Biker Punks from Hell. Biker Punks from Hell. Because we had a band that was like half of Bloody Mess and the Skabs, with two actual bikers that didn't really want to play music in front of people, so we replaced them. And we actually had a different name before that, which was a very, very offensive name that we did not use.
When you guys started writing songs, so you guys did, what was the first Skabs show? The first official one?
The first Skabs show was a benefit for the Rag newspaper in Illinois at the I-2 Hall in Peoria. That would have been sometime in 88.
And you got together with what? It was Fish and Ugly Ted, which you did a lot of stuff with Ugly Ted through the years. But how did you get together? Because I think Fish, was it Ted that was only 15 when you guys first? picked him up?
Yeah, Ted was pretty young, man. I met him at the record store I was working at. He came in one day and he just looked cool. He had a mohawk and a leather, and there wasn't hardly many of those people around in Peoria. And I wanted somebody that looked cool. And he's like, "Oh, I play bass, but not very good." I go, "Perfect, you're hired. As long as you got that mohawk and leather jacket, bro." And so we taught him. He became a better bass player, right? Like very quickly, and practiced a lot. He was a very disciplined dude. And he was one of the only guys in the Skabs that was kind of not politically correct, but he had a lot more morals than we did. He had a lot more ethics. And I think if he saw this, he would definitely agree with me. We were some pretty unethical son of a bitches, man. That's for sure. Very immoral son of a bitches. And Ted
Wasn't
was
that
always
your guys'
like,
thing? Not to be invited back to
it
shows?
was. And Ted was into the chaos, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't into some of the other shit we were into on the side.
And you guys' first Skabs recording was the '89, but I think it was only for label promo. But you guys recorded that in 3 hours.
Which album, bro?
The '89 demo.
Yeah, we did that one of just a few hours. Yeah, and then that ended up becoming the first Bloody Mess and the Skabs 7-inch record on
That was
Mephisto Records.
Yeah, you guys recorded that the wooden nickel sound in Dunlop,
Yeah,
Illinois.
Yep, Don Rosser produced that one for us.
I said you guys had T.J. O'Brien did the back artwork, and obviously you had John Wayne Gacy do the front artwork. And you, so when did you first get in touch with Gacy?
Well, I decided I wanted to start getting artwork from him to buy and resell. So I started writing to him about his art, and he sent me a big list of what he had for sale, and he would mail me stuff, and I'd spend, a couple $100 and make a couple $1,000. And then one day after writing to him for like months and months, pretty much weekly, and him writing back, he said, come visit. So we did. Me and my ex-girlfriend, Angel, at the time, went down to visit him, and ended up visiting him 3 times actually, and each visit was 6 hours at a time with just us in a little room with Gacy, no guards, nothing like that, him with handcuffs and shackles on, and sitting in a room for 6 hours, eating lunch with him, the whole 9 yards. So I spent 18 hours with him.
Now, when you first, is it true that when you first were going to go meet him, you were going to attack him, or is that what?
I was going to beat the fuck out of him, man. Hell yeah. I was going to get on, my goal was to get on the Nightline TV show with Ted Koppel, which was a very famous news show across the United States. If you're, 50 or older, you know who Ted Koppel was. Well, I wanted to be on that fucking TV show to get my band some publicity so I could get my band signed so I could make some fucking money. And I thought, well, I'll go attack the most prolific serial killer in American history. Who the fuck's going to be against me? So it's a win-win. And then someone said, "Dude, that's state property. You're going to end up in prison." I said, I'll do a little time. Fuck it. So I went there and I was going to beat the piss out of Gacy, but he was a fucking manipulator, a nice guy. I'm a nice guy. I mean, you know what I mean? I'm just a pleasant person, whatever. So was he. And I just couldn't, I'm not a violent person by nature, and I wasn't drinking. So I'm like, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I just was like, fuck it. I don't want to go to prison over beating the fuck out of Gacy. Fuck it. And he was in shackles and handcuffs. It would have been so easy to do it, because when you go visit someone on death row, it ain't like going to see somebody in prison. You sign a waiver saying, we're locking you in there with this fucking guy and 6 other death row inmates in this little area. There's no guards and you're locked in, bro. There's no guards. And one of it was the I-57 killer was in there, this black guy, and he stood up and came in the room with me and Gacy, and he said, "Motherfucker, I'll kill you fucking white people." He goes, "There's going to be bloodshed out before you leave here today." Dude, we were fucking dead afraid this guy was going to literally come in and kill us, because he had killed a ton of people. Super racist. Gacy had stab wounds all over his body because he was a pacifist, go figure, and people would attack him regularly anytime they got a chance. So there was a good chance we could have gotten hurt that time. And if I would have attacked Gacy, there's nothing stopping these other death row inmates that are having visits at the same time from coming attacking me. So I just decided, this is a little bit too precarious for me. No thanks.
Yeah, how, like, when you sit down and talk with Gacy, what is that? Is he like, does he talk about what he did, or that's not even a topic? Does he just talk about other shit?
Does he talk about it? He challenges you. He'll say, "Yeah, go ahead." I told him, I've read 8 books. Every book written about you, I've read it. He's like, "Cool, go ahead, try to trip me up, try to prove that I did these killings because I'm innocent. Go ahead, bring it on. What questions you got?" He was very confrontational, very, very manipulative, very much a smart ass. He was very cocky about the murders. He would tell me shit like, "Yeah, I know about some of them, but I didn't do them." And then he would tell me about these people that I've never told people this stuff. He would tell me shit like, yeah, me and Jeffrey Rignall, or not Jeffrey Rignall, that was the victim, I believe. Two of the Cram and Rossi were two people that worked for him, for his construction company. These guys would set up drug deals with people in like rural Illinois, and they would go out to the woods to have them meet them to do these huge drug deals. Then they would pull guns on them and handcuff and tie these people to trees, like to where they were like chain them to a tree, take the drugs and the money and leave, and just leave these fuckers to die out there. And he was telling me, yeah, these are the same guys that had keys to my house, and 12 different people had the key to my house. I didn't do any of those murders, but I know about some of them, you know. And then, of course, when he was, you know, getting ready to be executed, he fessed up. But yeah, I believe John Wayne Gacy killed hundreds of people.
Yeah, and for everybody who knows, I know you're not. So I know you personally. I know you're not into the serial killer thing anymore or anything like that. But I do want to ask you about it. And I heard once, is he this manipulative? And you could tell me this is true or not. But didn't he convince one of your friends to let him perform oral sex on him in the prison?
Yeah, I definitely won't say the guy's name or any information because he would be mortified. And he doesn't talk to me anymore because I think he knows I know too much. So nothing but respect to that guy because he's a good guy. But yeah, he was a friend of mine that was gay, and he was kind of a closet case gay guy. I don't have anything against gay people, by the way. I could care fucking less what people do in the bedroom. Exactly. But my buddy was gay, but I didn't really know that at the time, that he was gay, because I'm not, and I was a total womanizer, to be honest. But he went to visit Gacy and started writing him, right? And I think he probably said some things in these letters to Gacy that I didn't know about. Probably some sexually suggestive stuff, flirting, who knows, teasing him. Well, he went to visit Gacy alone. And when you're in that little cell area with him alone, it's not a cell, it's just a room. And there's like 6 in a row. And it's just you and a table and the person that's, you know, Gacy shackled and handcuffed. There's a section in that room where camera can't see you. So he was able to get this guy in that area, and he literally talked this guy into pulling his junk out, and Gacy gave my friend a blowjob. Yeah. And so my friend called me about him. My friend called me about him. You can't make this shit up. My friend called me about a week later, and he cocked a gun on the phone. He was a gun owner. And he said, I'm going to fucking kill myself. He was crying. He was drunk. Man. He goes, Bloody, you're the only one I know that understands what I'm going through. And I know you won't judge me because you're, you know, I'm a weird fucker, but I'm not gay, but I'm a weird fuck, you know, and I was visiting Gacy. Come on. But, so my buddy, I almost said his name. My buddy calls me, he goes, dude, I'm going to kill myself. I can't live with what I've done. It's atrocious. I can't believe he manipulated me, man, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I might be gay, but I'm not that gay. And he was just like, dude. And you know what I did? I had to use reverse psychology. I said, bro, because he was really into weird shit. And this guy ended up becoming a cop later, by the way. Wow. Yeah. And then he ended up quitting that too. But what happened was I said, look, dude, instead of looking at it like that, why don't you look at it like, I got a blowjob from the most prolific serial killer in American history. Fuck the world. Gacy blew me. And he started laughing because it was so preposterous. He was literally able to say, fuck it, you're right, man. This is not worth killing myself over. I go, you got a blowjob, so what? Who gives a fuck? Don't die over it.
I actually have the cover. I actually have the cover edge right here. You can see that Gacy did. You can't really see it in the reflection, but this is the actual 7-inch cover that he did for you guys.
Something to make a mother proud.
Yeah, I mean, when was the last time you talked to Gacy? Because he died in 94?
We wrote to each other for about 3 or 4 or 5 years solid, man. I told you my timeline is not very good. It was about 3 or 4 or 5 years solid. I had hundreds of letters from him. I recently sold my entire collection. But we called each other on the phone for years and years. We were very close. And I don't mean like, I'm not saying that I thought he was innocent. I don't. But we were friendly enough to where I kept a conversation. He was also writing to the singer for the Cramps and all kinds of famous people. He would bring out the stuff when I visited him, letters from like Oprah Winfrey and all these crazy talk show hosts that would try to like become his friends so they could manipulate him into like interviews. And so it wasn't just me that had an interest in this stuff. And I don't feel like I'm some creep because I did. I just think it was kind of weird that I wrote him for all those years. But I did. You know, I kept it going. And then when he did that to my friend, then that same guy that he gave a blowjob to, he manipulated the same guy into loaning him a bunch of money to start a 1-900 Gacy, 1-900-855-GACY right? And then you call and you hear a pre-recorded message with Gacy explaining how he's innocent and all this shit. Well, he did not pay my friend back. That pissed me off, so I sent Gacy a letter and threatened him. I said, "You're gonna fucking pay my friend back, or the next time I come visit you, I'm gonna strangle your ass." And he fucking sent me a letter saying, "I'm a ward of the state, motherfucker. You can't threaten me legally. I'm going to give this letter to my warden and they will come and arrest your ass if you ever threaten me again." And I was like, "Fuck you, dude." So that's when I decided to go on all the talk shows and got booked on the Phil Donahue.
You were on
Gary's-
Donahue. How was that?
It was great, man. They flew me out fucking on an airplane, gave me a freaking limo when I got there, gave me a 5-star hotel, gave me food vouchers for 2 days, gave me a limousine to the show. I got to stay in Chris Farley's dressing room from Saturday Night Live.
And you broke into his locker, didn't you?
Broke into his locker and put a bunch of my music in there and put a little note in there. Little letter, "Hey Chris, I'm a big fan. Bloody Mess, punk rocker here. This is my new album." And then I, reshut the locker.
And that's how you met, which I'll get to in a second. Actually, that's how you met Peter Yarmouth, right? From
I met Peter Yarmouth years before that. Because you're talking 90.
Show?
You're talking 93 was the 94 was the Donahue show. I met Peter Yarmouth in like 88.
88. Okay, so
88, 89. No, 88.
88. You also actually the empty 7-inch. You also had the Hillside Strangler. Now, was he they were a fan of your band? Is that like a fact, or is that?
No, that was something that my ex drummer Gabby used to like to fabricate. Just about everything he said was completely fabrication, and I'm not even dissing him. I'm not dissing him, even though whatever. We don't really actually get along, but I'm not dissing you, Gabby, if you're seeing this. But no, everything he said was a fabrication because we pre-agreed that we didn't have any morals or ethics and didn't give a fuck about lying. So I was able to get him on the Rolanda show with me by him telling Rolanda people that he was the guy that worked at the prison Gacy was at. And he actually was responsible for like feeding Gacy, and Gacy enjoyed like cable TV and like all these luxuries. And they're like, "What?" So I just didn't want to go to New York City alone again. So Gabby made up every single thing he said on that talk show was a complete lie.
Yeah, I remember seeing you guys on a lot of talk shows, and like you guys would talk about how he was. I figured it was bullshit back then, how you guys met in the psycho ward and stuff like that. And you were much younger. I mean,
no, don't get me wrong. I've spent more than a couple. I spent a couple times in a mental ward, but I never met Gabby there.
Yeah, I remember seeing some interview. You guys were saying that, but at 89, Gigi came and stayed with you and your girlfriend, right? And you guys recorded some tracks that could be found on the Insult and Injury Volume 2, The Bloody Years.
Yes, and also before that, though, Black and Blue Records did the Music to Make Your Ears Hurt compilations. There's 4 of them, and I was on there. Gigi was on there, and so I'm on all.
How did you get with Black and Blue?
Peter Yarmouth sent me a few letters, and I was just a big drunk back then, and I would never answer him. And he wanted to sign me to a contract, and I was like, I don't ever want to be a rock star. I just want to fucking be a punk, drinking in the bars and breaking shit. I didn't want to be a rock star, never did. And when Epic Records came calling later, I quit my band and put out an album called Anti-Rockstar, because I never wanted to be one, and I still would never be one. But what a joke of a life that is. Fuck that shit. But what was the question?
Black and Blue. So Black and Blue, that's how I found out about it. We were talking about this before you came on tonight. So I remember like I had gotten a copy, which I talked to you about bloody off the show. I had gotten a copy of the North Winds record, and I was at that time, like I didn't know who the Bloody Mess and the Skabs were. And I remembered there was like 2 discs, right, on the same CD.
Yeah, what happened was Peter finally did send me like a 3rd letter, and he said, "I've been trying to get a hold of you I've been writing you over and over, but I guess people like you can't be friends with." Anyway, later, and that's immediately when I decided to go ahead and call the number that he'd put on there, and I said, "Dude, I'm just a fucking drunk. I was an alcoholic for 30 years, man." I was like, "Dude, I wasn't purposely ignoring you. I don't give a fuck." And then he's like, "Well, we want to put one of your tracks by your band on this album that Gigi's on called Music to Make Your Ears Hurt." And then I was like, "Okay." And then that's when he signed me to a contract, and I was with that contract from 88 to 2010.
Yeah, because the Black and Blue had Algae Afterbirth, Cedar Street Sluts. What was the story behind that band? I know that Gigi was Gigi's backing band, but how did that? Because I've heard different rumors about that band, how they got started.
The Cedar Street Sluts was all Gigi Allin playing all the instruments, and he made up girls' names. That's all it was. There wasn't no Cedar Street Sluts. And then Peter decided to run with it as a marketing idea, so he found these chicks, Lena Luna and a couple other chicks, and he had them pose as a band, but they really didn't.
Clit, Ginger Lee.
Those people were made up. Gigi just made those up. That's all him playing on all those recordings.
Okay,
And the
so
Scumfucks too is all GG too, except for maybe Al Chappell on bass, but it's all the rest of it's all GG.
so you got so that Black and Blue had that had Dick Yorin, right? North Winds, obviously. GG and
Yeah,
the
but
Hog. Or,
The Cedar Street Sluts was a manufactured thing that Peter put together as like a manager, and it really wasn't a real band per se.
okay,
But
I
they were
apologize.
real women when they put their album out. There, it was girls singing on it that he'd enlisted, but it wasn't the same ones from Gigi Cedar Street Sluts.
Okay, so you guys did, and obviously that was your first record was the sixth grade field trip, and you guys recorded that March of what, 1990 at KJ Productions in Bloomington.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and it was engineered by Jeff Barron,
If you say so, I don't remember, bro.
and it was produced by Larry Evil Elf, who I do know that he passed away actually. Evil Elf, I don't know if you remember Larry.
Yeah, he was a good guy. Rest in peace to Larry Evil Elf. He was a good friend of Peter Yarmouth, and I considered him a friend at the time too. And yeah, rest in peace to Larry.
So you on vocals, Ty on guitars, and Ted on bass. Is that the
That album, yeah, because we kicked Gabby out of the band about 2 weeks before it started, before we recorded, and we'd been rehearsing, but he did some stuff that was unforgivable. So we said later, and then we got Ty Smith, who was a very awesome drummer, to play on the majority of the album. But we also
There's three
had
drummers, right? Three drummers on that record.
So yeah, Ty's on 75% of it or 80% of it, and then this guy named Thumper, he did 3 songs, and then we included the same song that was on Music to Make Your Ears Hurt, Logic and Conformity with Gabby, the last song on the album.
Okay. And I know, so it's funny for me because that was my first recording from you that I heard. I still listen to the record. I know, and I can hear, like, I've heard your new records. I've heard what you've done now, which is totally different than the early Skabs records, vocally wise. And I know that you're personally not a fan of the first records, the first record especially. Like I said, as an old-time fan of someone that first heard you from this band, that has a special place for me, that record. But what is your thoughts on that record?
I like it more than I used to. I listened to it the other day for the first time in decades, and it's okay. It's just got a really thin production. That's all. Ty wasn't represented real well on guitar. It sounds good. The guys played great. The lyrics, I'm really happy with my lyrics on that album. There's a lot of humorous lyrics on that album, and there's some kind of profound stuff that I was bizarre that like the song "Don't Worship Me," for instance. There's a lot of stuff in there that contained beliefs that I have now that I really didn't even know I had then, and it was kind of interesting. But yeah, I like the album. Okay, it's just my least favorite of my albums.
We're actually going to play that song here in a minute. And you also got Eric Baranis of the Peoria Journal to do the photo for you, the album cover photo, which I'll show Ed the album cover photo. Nobody else can see it, but Ed, this is the album cover for that. So that was shot by the guy from the newspaper for you?
Yeah, he was a cool guy, and he came out and did a lot of shoots and stuff. We were in the newspaper a lot back then, and like a lot. And so I decided to call him because I knew he'd be a pro, and we found a junkyard because we wanted to call the album Sixth Grade Field Trip. So we wanted to find an old junked out bus. So we did. We drove around and found one in Spring Bay, Illinois, and that's where the photo was taken.
And the name is based on kind of like a return to youth, the album name?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, just revisiting the spirit of how we were when we were younger.
And Steve-O from Impetigo's on there, isn't he also? He does the backups on a tune, and so does, who is it, from Naked Hippie? Clay of Naked Hippie?
Yeah, Jason Clay from Naked Hippies did some backup vocals, and so did Steve-O from Impetigo did some really good parts, man. Think of Punk Rock When You Shit. I think that might have, I don't even know if I came up with that or if Steve-O did or who did, but whoever did, maybe I came up with that one, and I think he came up with Voodoo Doll later.
Remember. You're also on an Impetigo record also.
Yeah, they asked me to come and be on their first album and do a spoken word piece. So I drove down to Bloomington. They played me this piece. They said, "Can you write something that would fit this?" So I sat down and wrote it in like 5 minutes. And they were like, "Oh my God, this is perfect." And so they said, "Turn on the machine." And they did it, and I did it in one take.
Nice. And the label removed some of the lyrics from the song Logic is Conformity on that record?
Yeah, they did. They removed one line, the line that says, "And he fucks me." It's about the devil.
That's a thought. And also in the liner notes, I noticed it said, no thanks to the Peoria and Bloomington Police Department.
Yeah, those pricks.
You guys were getting tickets on the way to the studio?
Yeah, fuck both those police departments. I'm in Oregon now, so fuck those guys. I don't go back to those places, so fuck them. Those pigs are, it's a police state in Illinois, and they can all kiss my ass.
That album was dedicated to a kids show.
Captain Jinx and Salty Sam. When I was
Salty
a little
Sam.
kid, I used to watch that show. And then later on, when Salty Sam died, I found out he died. And we went to his house and broke in and stole all the great mementos, like his hat and all the cool stuff. We found out he was an alcoholic. There was dog shit, like 3 feet of dog shit in every room, and empty beer, wine bottles and like booze bottles. It was crazy, bro.
Well, we're actually going to play a song from that record. We're going to play Don't Worship Me from the 1990 record off Sixth Grade Field Trip on Black and Blue Records. Like I said, it's Bloody F.Mess on vocals. You got Ugly Ted, on bass, Ty on guitars, and Nimrod, I think, played drums on this one, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, we're going to play that right now. This is Don't Worship Me from Bloody Mess and the Skabs, and we'll be right back with Bloody Mess right after this track.
Each other in a heavenly way. Realize the truth. You'll see that it pays. The one you bow down to should be yourself. Yourself. Your God. So don't worship me. I'm not a blind idiot God. I'm not a
So, Bloody, you guys played New York, Philly, Delaware, Milwaukee, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Cleveland, with bands like Psycho, Rednecks in Pain, and the name that I remember, Beautiful Bert and the Crotch Crickets. What was your memories of Bert?
Bert is somebody that I met back in 1985 when I first played Kenosha, Wisconsin. That became my second home. I used to spend so much time in Kenosha that I became massively affiliated with the town. That was my second home. Actually, it was way more punk rock than Peoria. They had a thriving punk scene there, and they still do, actually. But at the time, I became best friends with the band 1096, and the singer and drummer especially became my best buddies in life, and the drummer is still one of my best friends. The singer, my best mate, Dean, he's dead, unfortunately, from 1998. He died on Halloween. But Those guys were the best. And Beautiful Bert was just at the time a fan. I didn't know of him as anything but a fan. And next thing you know, he's got a band, and he's called Beautiful Bert, and the beautiful one, they called him. And he was like a big man, like, you know, very big man, like a wrestler size, but even twice as big.
He was a wrestler, I think, for a short period of time.
Yes, and he was also, I think, a roadie for the Lords of the New Church, and he did other stuff too. But he was a real rocker. He lived in a little room. His whole family died. His family invented like the Lawn Boy lawnmower. They were like very wealthy family, and then some shit happened. They died. He was left a massive amount of money. He blew through it, and then he was always living in a little teeny like boarding house. He'd have like a little room with like a little cooker in there. All his walls were covered in total rock and roll posters from like the 70s, punk rock and rock and roll. He was one of the most real rock and roll people I ever met in my life.
I've heard that he was actually like a caring dude. Like he was behind the scenes. He was actually a really nice guy.
He was a great guy.
Nice. And so some of his stage stuff, though, I remember, didn't he like, what was some of the stage? Didn't he like stick Barbie dolls? Like, wasn't there like a whole thing going on with him live? Because I know he had some pretty crazy shows.
Oh, Beautiful Bert was known for a long time. He got out of that eventually, but for a long time, he had Beautiful Bert and the Crotch Crickets, Beautiful Bert and the Luscious Ones. He had the BB Slags.
That was the band, right? The Slags.
Yes. I think that's when he stopped being quite as intense on stage. Maybe I'm wrong, but I know in his early shows, he was often known to get naked, completely naked. One time I saw him shove a Barbie doll up his ass.
There you go.
Yeah, he was very, very much a shock rock performer for years. And then when his album came out in 1996, it's one of the best fucking punk rock records you can get.
Great.
Yeah, it's a really, really great record, man. I can't say enough about it.
Do you remember the last time you actually saw Bert or talked to him?
I do. We had a huge falling out back in '95. I started an outlaw country band, and I retired from punk rock yet again. And I did that for a couple of years. And those guys, some people copped an attitude with me. Other people recognized that there's a thin parallel between punk rock and outlaw country, and the only fucking difference is the style of clothing and the beat of the music. That's it. But other than that, some people like Bert copped an attitude and, oh, blah, 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 this and that. And then we had a series of fallings out, and we pretty much hated each other. And I'd go to Kenosha and play. And I remember we were opening for him, and we were just on stage really angry at Bert. And when I left the stage, I pissed all over the entire stage and said, there you go, Beautiful Bert's up next. And then it just got worse and worse over the years. Well, finally, one day we were playing in Milwaukee, Wisconsin with my band, The Transfusions. I don't even know what year. I'm going to guess 2005. But something around that time. And Beautiful Bert showed up. He drove like the hour or whatever it is from Kenosha to Milwaukee. And he walked in with a joint in his hand. And he said, hey, I brought this as a token of peace. You want to smoke a joint? I said, sure. Hell yeah, bro. And that was it. And we ended up going to a party after the show, and we got all wasted together. And Beautiful Bert got really fucked up and gave my wife his wallet with his ID and everything in it. And we ended up going home on accident with it because we were all wasted. And then, about a month later, he died, I think.
You know, and like you said, anybody who hasn't heard any of that Beautiful Bert stuff, it was some killer stuff. It really was.
Great album. Fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. And 92, talking about that, we actually opened up the show tonight with Empty. Off the Empty EP, did 5 tracks. But what do you remember about writing the song Empty?
I remember writing it very quickly. When I write lyrics like that, it's usually stream of consciousness, and I just sat down and wrote it very quickly. And then when we recorded it, it was just like, whoa, because my friend Bill Meisner, who was our guitar player at the time, that was the first song he ever wrote. He's like, hey, man, I actually wrote my first original. I said, come over, bring your guitar. And he brought it over and played it for me. And I was like, oh, man. So I wrote those words, and then I put it to that music, and it was just perfect. And we've actually recorded that song 3 times in my career now.
Yeah, it's that's something I've heard over and over again. That one, and actually, I'm going to play. I actually have a promo from that record, I believe. See if this works here, because whenever I try this shit, it always gets crazy. Let me see here.
Everything is better than before.
Attention, attention. Peoria's most notorious underground punk rock band, Bloody Mess and the Skabs, have just released their new 5-song 7-inch EP on Black and Blue Records. Hear it, feel it, buy it. Empty is the title, and it comes with a free poster artistically designed by the Hillside Strangler. Available for only $5 at Co-op Records and other local record stores. Bloody Mess and the Skabs are represented exclusively by Black and Blue Records.
Now, how much shit did you guys? No, that's what I wanted to ask you before. Like, when you guys were using the artwork for these guys, you guys are getting a lot of publicity for this, right? You're getting. I know you guys were getting banned from venues at that time and stuff, but you guys were getting a lot of publicity from the Hillside Strangler and all Gacy and all that.
Yeah, because I would send out a press release to the United Press, and I'd send it out to UPI, which would then take it and give it to newspapers in every single city and every single state. So we were getting calls for interviews and from newspapers all over the freaking country constantly. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, you were also right with Manson too, right? Who was the crazy? That's what I want. Go ahead first. You were right with Manson also.
I corresponded with Charlie once. I sent him a letter, and he actually sent me a postcard back telling me that back when he was 15, he actually went to jail in Peoria, and then he remembered that the jail had bad food.
There you go. Who was the straight out of all the guys you've written with back in the day? Who was the one that made you feel the most uneasy? You think?
Well, Gacy was a creepy guy, man. He was just a complete phony. He's a complete killer. He was always creepy. His stuff was always freaky. I used to write to all kinds of creepy people. Probably Otis Toole.
Okay. Oh yeah. Damn. So
yeah, he was pretty. He would send me all kinds of drawings of like cut off body parts and all kinds of disgusting weird shit.
Did you ever write with Ramirez at all?
I did not. I had some stuff of his in my collection, but I never wrote to him. And Otis Toole was Henry Lee Lucas's killing partner.
Yep. That's so. And Empty, is that your most popular? Was that your, like, out of all the tracks you released, do you feel like, because I know you had some radio play with a song later on in your career, but was that the first song that you felt like was really kind of hit for you?
Well, yeah,
underground, so to say.
I mean, not really, because Biker Punks from Hell, Cigarette on the Clit. Cigarette on the Clit was a big one. I Ain't Got No Friends back in the Unaccepted days was a popular one. And then Cigarette on the Clit from the first Skabs EP was pretty Ugly Friends, Biker Punks from Hell. And then when the Skabs did 6th grade field trip, we had a song called My Address Book. That was one that everybody liked a lot. So those were some classics, and then 6th grade field trip, the song itself. Of course, later on, Black Little Heart, and then Hungover and Stoned and stuff like that.
And Black Little Heart, you got radio and play on that.
I did. We were getting national radio airplay on about 17 stations across the country, and we were getting regular rotation in the town I was in, and it was on every 2 hours for like a long time, and regular radio. And so we were getting calls from like Epic Records saying, "Hey, we're scouting you guys. We just signed Mudvayne," who we were playing gigs with regularly. And I know those guys. My wife used to live with the drummer, Matt from Mudvayne. But the thing is I didn't want to be a rock star. So that's when I pretty much at that point, I sabotaged the band and got out of the whole business and got into broadcasting full time.
Yeah. And there was an interview you did years ago. I think it was 93. Adam Pitcher's Talking At You, I think it was called. I've never seen another show from that guy. That was a great interview, but like, what do you remember? Did you know him, or did you know that show, or was that just kind of like a one-time thing?
Yeah. Adam was a good friend of mine. He was a cool dude. I haven't been in touch with him in years, but I'm in touch with his brother still. I don't think he's on social media, but he was just a really trippy, kind of odd guy that was cool, that we were friends, and he had that little talk show on cable TV, and I think he did quite a bit of them. I just don't think he's got him out there online.
I think yours is the only one out there, the one that you guys
you
and Gabby.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm glad we were able to preserve that stuff.
And that was 93. And also in 93, man, when Gigi died, how did... first of all, when was the last time you actually spoke to him? And do you remember like your feelings when you found out he had passed away?
Yeah, I was kind of shocked. I knew that he was going to die young. It was, you don't live that way forever. And I knew he wanted to die young. So, I mean, it wasn't like heartbroken, for fuck's sake, because the guy was telling everyone he was going to commit suicide for years. And he told me about it many, many times, how he was going to take out the audience. And I said, what if I'm in the audience? He's like, well, that's up to you. I'm just kind of like, well, I won't be at that show then, dude. Because he would talk about it all the time. And then he was in prison, when it was supposed to happen, when he was supposed to do that suicide thing. But when he died, I was kind of in shock at first and didn't believe it. And me and Merle really weren't talking. Well, I called Merle in New York City and I said, Merle, what's up? It's Bloody. And he's like, hey, Bloody. And you could just tell his voice was down. I said, is it true? He's like, yeah, man, it is true, bro. And I was like, oh, man, I'm sorry to hear it. He's like, he was just completely in shock. And I said to Merle, I said, are you guys going to have a memorial for like friends or whatever? He goes, yeah, for friends. And that was it. And he didn't invite me.
Ah, shit. But and Gigi, didn't you? But you guys, like I said, you guys were really close because didn't you piss off Gigi once because he actually he told you, hey man, like he told you he loved you basically.
Yeah, we were backstage at the Exit Club in Chicago, and we had been hanging out for like a week. We were just having a ball, man. And I said, dude, we were sitting there doing something. I go, man, I love you, bro. And he didn't say anything. And I go, what? You're not going to tell me you love me back, huh? And I was just fucking with him. And he goes, Bloody, I can't tell you. I'm not going to tell you I love you. I said, fuck that. You're going to tell me you love me, bro, because I know you do. Or I wouldn't be with you right now if you didn't love me. So just tell me you love me. He fucking was like, are you fucking mental? I go, no, I love you, man. Tell me you love me back. And he goes, Bloody, I love you, but don't you ever tell anyone I said that. And then what happened was, flash forward about 3-4 years, I'm in Colorado and I'm on the phone with Sharon Rose, his #1 fan from like Life. And I fucked up and told her, the big mouth, and then she couldn't believe it because she was like, he's lying. So she went back to Gigi, and I got a letter in the mail that was so angry. Don't you ever tell a cunt anything I tell you. God damn it. I'll never talk to you again, and all this stuff. I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude, calm down. We know you have emotions because I know he loved his mother. I saw letters that he had written way after all that Merle let me see, where like letters he had written to his mom, and they were like heartfelt stuff, man. He had a heart. He just buried it very deeply.
And like you said, you did the fanzine for him, and you also actually did in '93. You were putting out a magazine called Fanatics, right? I think you did 4 or 5 issues of that.
Yeah, I did 4 issues of Fanatic fanzine, and I'm actually working on the 5th one right now. The first one in 30 years.
Oh wow, shit! There you go. And you interviewed. You actually interviewed. I believe it was going back to Gacy. John Wayne Gacy's last interview was in your magazine.
Yeah, as far as I know, it was one of the last interviews, if not the last interview. And yep, sure did.
And you also interviewed El Duce, right? Which I thought was, who everybody is, and we're going to talk about this at the end of the video, the end of the interview too. Bloody has a YouTube channel, which is great. It has there's so much killer content on there, Bloody. First of all, I want to tell you that, man, it's a great channel, some great stories, great experiences, and we'll give you all that information when the show's over, so you can find Bloody there. But Bloody, you've had how many videos you have up right now?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know, dude. Like probably 70 something.
Yeah, so he's got some killer story. I mean, I'm telling you guys, check out his YouTube, and this is just some of the stuff on. I mean, I heard this story actually from there, the El Duce story, right? So you basically got him in the magazine. Was issue 3, I think it was. He was in there. And how was dealing with El Duce? Because didn't you call him at first, and he was wasted, and you had to like go to basically return it to writing letters to each other?
Yeah, whenever I'd call the house, he was always completely wasted because he was going through really bad, severe alcoholism then. And the woman that he was staying with, the woman that would end up getting on the phone every time, finally, after a few calls, I said, I want to do this interview, but I can't seem to catch him sober. And she said, El Duce wants you to mail it to him. I said, okay, so I did. I mailed it, and then he sent it back about a week or 2 later with all the answers filled out on the paper.
Nice. And I heard you talking about like when you're on the video you did for your YouTube channel with the whole Cobain thing and stuff like that. It's a crazy thing because I didn't realize until I listened to your channel actually that his head was shot, like that El Duce's head was removed from his body when they found him. I had no idea until I actually listened to your channel.
Yeah, it's pretty creepy stuff, man. There's all kinds of little pieces that I've been discovering about that, and another weird thing too, there's people that, say, oh, he wasn't murdered, but he was, man. And everyone knows it. And the funny thing is Chris Novoselic from Nirvana basically tells the press and in the media that he believes that it wasn't anything to do with Courtney Love. But a friend of mine, Bhagavan Das, who I used to manage, who's a very, very, very popular in the spiritual scene, I was managing him, and he told me, and he doesn't know anything about current rock and roll. He's like, yeah, I was up in Seattle with a guy that was in a very famous band called Nirvana. And I go, really? Who? He goes, the guy, Chris Novoselic. I go, you know Chris Novoselic? He goes, yeah. I was up at his mansion in Seattle. We were drinking a $300 bottle of wine, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, what do you say to you? He goes, all I know is he said the singer of his band was killed by The Hole. I'm like, you've got to be kidding. He said that to you? He goes, yeah. He goes, what's The Hole? I said, Courtney Love. He goes, yeah, that lady in her band or whatever. I said, wow, that's interesting. So he apparently told somebody else that he thought Courtney was behind it. So maybe he's afraid of getting killed or sued if he says otherwise in the press. I don't know. That's interesting stuff, man.
Yeah, definitely. And people have been asking that question for a long time. And with back with your music too, there was a point where you were getting death threats.
Yeah, over the years I have.
You also went through 34 members too. But was it the Skabs that went through 34 members?
32 or 34, yeah. Because we had like probably 5 or 6 different drummers at different times, a multitude of guitar players and bass players, and I think the last time I counted, it was like somewhere between 28 and 34, something like that.
Well, on the empty EP, what it was, Gabby, you, Ted, Mike Hensley, and Bill Mazanier was his name.
Meisner.
So that was the lineup for that on the empty 7-inch you guys did back then.
Yeah, Bill's the guy that co-wrote Empty with me, and he also sings backups on my new album too.
Nice. And in '94, you release, which I think is a killer record. You release "Hungover" and "Stoned," and again, there's a lot of musicians on that record too, right?
Oh yeah, that was done in like I think 3 or 4 different sessions with all different crew each time.
And where did you record that at?
We recorded that at well, like I say, it was all different recordings. So to my knowledge, it was all recorded at Wooden Nickel, but I can't remember, to be honest.
Okay, well, we're going to play the song "Tragedy" off of that. We're going to play that bloody. Anything you could tell us about Tragedy?
It's just autobiographical, basically. Life is a tragedy. That's what it means to me. It's just another nihilistic little number.
Yeah, we're going to play Bloody Mess and the Skabs, Tragedy, off the Hungover and Stone record that came out in 1994. We'll be back with Bloody F.Mess right after this track. And that was Tragedy from Bloody Mess and the Skabs off the Hungover and Stone record. 1994, you quit the band, right? During the tour?
Yeah, we were on stage in Wilmington, Delaware, and I did a few songs with the band, and I just fucking threw the mic stand down and said, I quit, pack up, take me home.
You guys did put out a 7-inch after that, right? You guys put out a Dog Biscuit for Sick Puppies was put out from Black and Blue after you guys were broken up?
Yeah, because that was recorded before we broke up, and it was getting ready to come out right when the tour was over, and then it ended up coming out a little late. And by that time, we were totally broke up. Yeah.
After that, you guys put what 95? You put together a band and wrote the record. The Bloody was it the Bloody and the Country Trash Punks. You guys did a 7-inch on Baloney Shrapnel Records out of Arizona.
Yes, we did.
And so you did that, and then also 96. You mentioned this a little earlier in the show too. You put together an outlaw country band called the Renegades.
Yep, we played 2 or 3 gigs a week, 4 sets of music a night for about a year and a half.
How were those shows in those bars?
They're awesome. Some of the best years of my life in the Renegades. That was amazing.
You guys did what covers from like David Allan Coe, Merle Haggard, Johnny Cash, Hank Jr.
Yeah, yeah, we did pretty much all the people you can think of that are like classic country. Freddie Fender. We also threw in a little bit of Allman Brothers Band and some of the Doors and just different stuff like that.
You guys were playing what 4 sets twice a week?
4 sets 2 or 3 times a week.
You guys were playing what? You guys were playing. Didn't your daughter? I think I heard you say once that your daughter was even playing tambourine with you guys at one time.
Yep, when she was really little, she would sit in with us a couple times and play her little tambourine, and it was cute.
You guys did a 6-song demo in '96.
We did, yes.
And you guys were actually having like some pretty good success with that too, weren't you?
Yeah, the Renegades were a really good band. We were doing parties and charity events and a lot of bars and a lot of little dive bars too. And we were doing we played in the Northwoods Mall in Peoria, Illinois one time. Yeah, we were pretty good band. It was pretty awesome. Nothing like the punk rock stuff. Now I'm not denigrating my other music. I'm saying it, but it was nothing like that style of music. It was all very authentic. We were doing like the Mavericks and all kinds of like country stuff that was pretty cool.
You guys would just get burnt out eventually, right? Because that led you to, I know you did the Vaynes basically came after that.
Yeah, I got burned out and wanted to start doing rock and roll again. And so we decided to morph into a band called the Vaynes, doing rock and roll, bubblegum, kind of a lot of songs that were fronted by females like Joan Jett and Blondie and different stuff. We did a lot of the Archies and the Bay City Rollers and Bowie, a lot of glam rock.
Right.
Yeah, it was a trip, man.
And when you did the country thing, did you not you on purpose left? You weren't using the name Bloody anymore, right? When you did the Renegades, you kind of wanted to step away from that completely.
No, I didn't really step away from using the name Bloody. I just didn't want to associate it with that band because it had nothing to do with what I was doing before. So when I did that band, I never even told anybody in the punk scene about any of it or let anybody know what we were doing. We just would go out and I would just use my regular name, and I was the manager. So
You guys did a split 7-inch, right, in '98 with the Vaynes and the Psychedelics on Fanatic Records, 2 songs, and then Concrete and Cornfields, and a compilation in '98.
Yeah, there's 2 different Concrete and Cornfields, Volume 1 and 2.
Okay, and then
97 and 98.
And when you're playing with the Vaynes, you guys are playing in bars and stuff like that, and supposedly the Vaynes shows were pretty out of control.
The Vaynes was one of my more professional bands, actually. There was less physical craziness, and it wasn't about shock rock. It was about straight up hard rock and roll. And we were playing with bands like Nazareth and Enough's Enough, and just bigger bands on a bigger rock scale, opening up for like the Kiss Army tribute act and just different rock band. We were more of a rock and roll band. There wasn't as many antics, although there were quite a few Vaynes shows that were very, very, very insane and made some of the Skab shows look pale. But for the most part, that was a professional band that was out to make money and also do the best rock and roll show we could do, and throw in a little bit of punk rock too.
And you mentioned Nazareth, didn't you? Didn't you piss off McCaffrey one night?
Well, what happened was I was really drunk and extremely drunk, and we did our show, and I was just in awe because I grew up. That was one of my favorite bands was Nazareth, and I kept saying, "Hey," I went up to the guys, and I'm like, "Hey, man, how you doing? I'm the lead singer, for the opening act. Oh, good to meet you, mate." And then a little while later, I blacked out and forgot I already did it. So I walked up to the guy again. "Hey, man, good to meet you. I'm the singer." He's like, "Yeah, you told me that, bro." And then a little while later, I did it again. And one of the guys, I don't remember which, he went ballistic. He's like, "God damn, he's from England. I can't do the accent." But he's like, get this guy out of his fucking wanker won't quit telling me he's a goddamn singer of the opening act. And they got super pissed off at me. And there was a lot of other things that happened too that got me kicked out. But then we got caught bootlegging the show. We were videotaping their show, and their security guy came over and tried to take our camera. So yeah, because they're from Scotland, not England. I'm sorry. But yeah, anyway.
And you guys, then you changed the name to Bloody Mess, to Bloody and the Vaynes, right? And started doing punk rock covers and stuff.
Yep. One day I showed up to practice when we were doing because we were doing like 2 or 3 gigs a week, playing all kinds of rock and roll clubs, doing covers, making money to pay the bills. And then one day I just couldn't take any more of it. I said, you know what? I want to do originals again. So we started off by doing a song called Stuck in Monunk, and that was on the single that you mentioned with the Vaynes, and we did These Boots Are Made for Walking by Nancy Sinatra, and that was the beginning of the original era.
And My Black Little Heart, was that on the Concrete and Cornfields too?
It was on one of those Concrete and Cornfield CDs. Yep.
Okay. And then you put out a record in 1999 that had 13 tracks on it. And what you put another 7-inch out for the My Black Little Heart was a 7-inch with Empty on it, right? A remix of Empty.
It was a CD. It was a CD EP sort of promo thing.
Okay. And so I mean, and then you got kicked out of the Vaynes though.
No, I actually quit the Vaynes because Epic Records called me and said, we're scouting your band, the Vaynes, Black Little Heart's a great song. And then I thought, man, if I get signed to a label, what it really is going to mean is I'm going to be put on a bus for the next 9 months out of the year. I'm not going to see my daughter, my wife. I'm going to be, and this is not the kind of life that I ever considered doing. And I just was like, what if that did happen? I'm not saying that it would have, but what if it would have? So that's when we flew to Cleveland to do a show the next week after that phone call, and I got completely inebriated and destroyed the show. And when we got back, I just told the band, look, man, I'm going to have to go. I'm going to focus on doing radio. And I got into full-time radio.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to talk about that right now. But people don't realize you had you're doing all these things. You have these bands, you have this I guess chaos music thing going on. But also at this time, you do have a family that you're also being responsible. So you had a whole thing going on that people didn't even realize behind the scenes.
Yeah, our daughter was born in 1993, so about a year before the Skabs broke up, and that was part of the reason that I got out of that. It was just too self-destructive, and I couldn't continue doing it if I wanted to ensure my daughter having a father sticking around, so I decided I better get out of the shock rock thing, and after 8 years, it was time anyway.
In 99, you get a job as a DJ in Bloomington, Illinois, right? Because your landlord was there. So your landlord owned the station?
My landlord was a famous DJ that was the guy I listened to as a kid on the radio, and then coincidentally, he became my landlord, and all my life I wanted to be a radio DJ, so I found an inn, and so that was in Peoria, Illinois at WWCT, and then I started making friends with a guy that had a shift on there, and I became his intern, and after I interned for about a month, then I was given a shift, and they had me on midnight to 6 a.m., 7 days a week.
And you spent 3 years at iRock? Was it?
I did. Yep. After I went to the Rock 106 for a few years, I went to iRock for a few years in Bloomington, and I did 6 to midnight there, 5 days a week.
And like you said, as a kid, you actually you were pretending to be a DJ as a child, right?
Yeah, and my mother even reminded me before she died. She said, your whole life you wanted to be a DJ. You always pretended you were a DJ in your room. You're always acting like you're on the radio. I remember doing it somewhat, but not as much as she does. But it was funny that I ended up becoming one.
Well, definitely, and then you started the Church of Rock show. You had Alice Cooper on, which I'm a big Cooper guy. You had the Plasmatics, the Stooges. I mean, you've had a list of guests, but tell me about you're still doing Church of Rock actually in a way. So what can you tell people about that who's never heard Church of Rock?
The Church of Rock started a Halloween night of 1999. It's a diverse radio show where we play everything from doo-wop to the heaviest of metal to folk rock, blues rock, punk rock, psychedelic rock, everything. We pretty much play it all. If it's good, we play it. We try not to play the songs that are played on regular radio. We do a lot of B-sides and, deep album cuts. And, we play a lot of new bands too. I get hit up probably 12 times a day with people sending me links. And it's really hard to find time. But whenever I do, I usually end up playing those songs. And so the show turns 25 this October, and we're on every Sunday night. KSKQ Radio here in Ashland, Oregon, 2-hour program, and we do interview somebody on just about every show.
Yeah, you guys we had Chris Ryford on this week, and you just had him on last week. You know, we were just
Yeah, I've
talking
got
to him.
also gonna. I think Danny from Autopsy is gonna be coming on soon.
Oh, nice. And you had what you had? Who else did you have on recently? There was someone else you had on. We were talking about. It's slipping my mind right now. You had Caton on from Hyrax, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Caton from Hyrax was just on recently. That was a good one.
Yeah. So you know the Church of Rock, you do that, and is it you also became a minister, right? And started like doing weddings.
Well, yeah, because it was a whole play on words, Church of Rock, and then I became Reverend Moody, and then one of my bosses decided, why don't you become legally ordained, get like a non-denominational license and do weddings? So I said, okay. So I did it, and then she set it up for me in Bloomington. It was a big promotion, and I married 13 couples, and they were at a bowling alley, and each couple was standing on a different lane. We called the whole event Lover's Lane, and I pronounced them. I said, "You may now kiss your brides" at the very end. And 13 couples were legally married that day, and every single part of the press came out, man. ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, all of them.
And
Crazy.
that was yeah, and that was actually some positive press for you because back in the day, the newspapers. Now you were on the newspaper for a good thing. It's at 2003 you formed Bloody Mess. Well, Bloody and the Transfusions. You did a tour, and that band lasted 5 years.
Yeah, we sure did, and that started because somebody put out a Bloody Mess tribute album in Peoria, and they wanted some new material for it. So I recorded a song that I wrote with West Beach from the Plasmatics, and then I recorded another brand new original with the guys, and then about 23 other bands from across the country recorded songs of mine. And when that came out, they were going to have a CD release party, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to start a band and play at that party. So the record label flew in from Rhode Island. I had a new band called the Transfusions, and that's how it started.
And you're talking about the Bloody and the Bastard Children.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and you like you said, you and West Beach had a song on there. 2008, Bloody Mess and the New Disease. You did a 5-song EP with that too, right? And you guys did a bunch of shows, and it didn't last very long. But you quit after a show at Beer Bellies.
We played for about a year. We did a bunch of states, played like Detroit and all kinds of different places. And then we played at a place called Beer Bellies, which I call Barf Bellies. And the bass player of the band was a prick and decided to quit the band before the show and texted me and just said, "I quit." And that was it. I was like, "You prick." We were already there set up and everything. So I decided, you know what? We're going to do the show without a bass player. Fuck him. So we did. And that's what we did. And we still got paid. And then the other guys quit after the show. But we did at least a year, though, that band, Bloody Mess and the New Disease.
And 2011 is when you relocated to Portland?
Well, yeah, 2010, a band called me out of Medford, Oregon, and said, "Hey, man, we cover your song Empty, and we're going to be going on tour." Yep, the Hollow Bodies. And they said, we're going to be, or actually, no, it was a band called My Own Black Eye. And the bass player of that band later joined the Hollow Bodies. And they after I sang with My Own Black Eye in Peoria, the bass player is back in Oregon. He joined the Hollow Bodies and then asked me to come out and do some gigs with them and do a tour. So they learned all my stuff. I flew out, did one rehearsal, and we did a 12-state USA tour together. That was crazy.
And you're doing and then you're still doing the Church of Rock, but what is it, KZZE radio at that time period?
Yep, I came out to Oregon and I got a radio show for about a year and a half on KZZE, which was a heavy metal station, kind of hard rock. And then they got rid of me. That was the only time in radio out of my 8 radio stations I've been on that I got fired. But I wasn't really fired because I never signed a contract. I was working for trade, but they let me go because they kept finding roaches from joints I'd been smoking, and they didn't want me to smoke weed because they were rednecks. And then there was also a homophobic listener we had a drag queen that was on the show that had a segment called Bitch Talk with Bitch Cock. And because there's a famous drag queen out here called Melina Bitchcock. And I thought, let's give Melina a segment and make it the gayest segment ever. And we did it. And, some guy sent a letter in saying, "Yeah, St. Christopher and Derek Moody are both a couple of faggots, and I want to hang them from the nearest tree," and all this. And so, based on that letter and those roaches they found, they got rid of me.
And I know you did. I remember. So you did the what was it, Bloody Mess Rock Circus, which I do remember this because actually we had set up something where you were going to play in St. Petersburg at that time period. Because you guys did the Mountain Rock record, and you had Richie Ramone played on that record, right?
Richie Ramone sang backups on it.
Paul
and
from
Rick
45 Graves.
Rick Agnew. What's that?
You had Paul from 45 Graves on there and the Screamers.
Yeah, he recorded the album for me, and he played keyboards. And then Rick Agnew produced the album. He's the guy that was one of the original drummer for Social Distortion. Plus, he was in the Adolescents, Christian Death, and so on. And also, Don Bowles from the Germs does backup vocals on that album too.
Yeah, I remember that time period. I remember you were going to come to. You actually had a tour booked, right? You had some dates done. I know you were coming to St. Pete. We had you booked over there at the Foo Bar, actually, over on Central Avenue.
Yeah, I appreciate you setting that up for me, and sorry we had to cancel, but I ended up falling off the wagon and some gig we did up in Redmond, Oregon, and got extremely drunk and a bunch of chaos ensued. And then, one of the members of the band had a hard time letting go of grudges, and there was a bunch of weird feelings going on. I thought, you know what, this shit's played itself out, so I had to cancel the tour, unfortunately.
And you also did what? The Backstabbers after that? Bloody and the Backstabbers. And you also... First, let's talk about the Backstabbers. What was that all about?
The Backstabbers was a band that pretty much was doing a few originals of mine, but also doing a lot of covers. We were doing like Dead Kennedys and the Cramps and like AC/DC and just a bunch of cool rock and roll and punk stuff covers. And then we threw in a few of my songs as well, some Ramones. And we were just primarily existed to open up for headlining acts, punk rock bands out here. We opened up for like Fang and quite a few shows. I think that band lasted about a year.
And you also, this is when you start to get into because I know you got into your spiritual side around this time period, right? Where you kind of like chilled out a little bit and like, how would you explain that?
That kind of happened in 2012, right during the rock circus. Yeah, I found a book called Hinduism, The Complete Idiot's Guide to Hinduism. And I don't know why. I don't know why I read it. I picked it up for $1 at Barnes & Noble and I read it and it blew my mind. So it changed my entire life. And yeah, pretty much that's the deal.
And you did some acting too, right?
I did. When I moved out to Oregon, I actually acted in, I think, 4 or 5 independent films. A few of them have been put out on DVD. And then the Rock Circus also wrote a song for the Spy Darling soundtrack over in England around that time. And we also wrote the soundtrack for the movie Creeper out here too at that time, the main song. But yeah, I did 4 or 5 videos. You can find them a couple of them on YouTube, on the movie Creeper and Covet Thy Neighbor under Tunnel 13 Films on YouTube.
And what in 2019? I know you were still doing the Hollow Bodies. When did that end?
The Hollow Bodies only lasted about a year. We recorded 3 songs in the studio, and then we did that one U.S. tour. And on that U.S. tour, I recorded my final recording for Black and Blue Records, which was an album that came out called Bloody and the Hollow Bodies, Ready, Willing, Unstable, and it's a killer live album. But the band only lasted about a year, and that's when we morphed into the Rock Circus.
The Rock Circus, I definitely remember. And then, let's talk about. So now you're, obviously you just 40th anniversary of the new record.
Yeah, my 40th anniversary and putting out music, and also my 10th album.
And I'll tell you, man, it's a very diverse record. I followed you through your career, and this, it's definitely a diverse record, man. You got a bunch, and you have a bunch of guests on there too, right? You have half of the album's collaboration.
Yeah, most of the album's all collaborations. Dave Moe, he's actually on 7 out of the 13 songs, but it's still a collaboration. So yeah, the whole thing is me with different people. One song, Wax Fruit, has West Beach and TC Tolliver from the Plasmatics. The song Dark Days has me doing the vocals with Sammy Town from Fang. Donnie Bowles, the drummer for the Germs, did backing vocals on Michael Monroe, Rock and Roll Therapy, and Skies Are Black. And we had Bill Meisner from the Skabs and Lydia Paeski, Sister Tracy from the radio shows. Quite a few cool guests on that one, man. Yeah, for sure. Paul Rossler also recorded that one from the Screamers again.
Yeah, so I'm going to play the song Zeller Dweller now from that record, which I think it's definitely a cool song. Reminds me of like the old Bloody Scab stuff,
Well, that's a true story because Zeller Zone was a mental hospital in Illinois that I spent a couple times in, and so that's a totally true story. That all the words are real.
That's a good song. I'm going to play that now. We're going to play Bloody. This is from the new album, Dark Daze Unfazed, 2023 Fanatic Records. This is Zeller Dweller from Bloody F.Mess. And we'll be right back with Bloody on the Tampa Morgue right after this song.
Yes, a Zeller dweller, like me came.
So Bloody, you recorded the vocals for that album in 4 hours. Basically, we did three tracks of takes of each track.
For Dark Days Unfazed?
Yes.
Yeah, we did. Paul usually has a standard way of trying to do each song 3 times. So yeah, we did it all in just half a day for sure. And then I did the wax fruit vocal separately of the next day.
Nice. And so and that, it's like you also worked with Don, like you said, Don Bowles. He was a big influence on you.
Don Bowles, I was always a big Germs fan. And one time I was in a party in LA in like 2010, and I was getting ready to leave the party. And my buddy said, "Hey, you know who that is DJing, right?" I said, "No." He said, "That's Don Bowles of the Germs." I'm like, "What? I guess I'm not leaving the party." So was trying to figure out how I could introduce myself to Don. And then he walks by me. "Does anybody have any weed? Anybody got any weed?" Because he's a big pothead. And I happen to be a huge pothead. So I'm like, "Hey, dude, I got a bunch of weed. Want to smoke some joints?" He's like, "Sure." And we literally sat on the floor right where we were sitting with Don Bowles for about an hour and smoked like at least 4 joints in a row and just talked, gave me his number. And then I kept in touch. And ever since then, we've worked together 2 or 3 times.
Nice. So you guys, what you did the whole file trading on that record, right? Pretty much, basically trading files back and forth and all that stuff, which is pretty much. Do you miss the old days of getting together in a band room and jamming all the time?
Not really, because I did it for so many years, and almost it was the norm. So it's nice to do something. I like things that aren't normal, so I think it's cool to do collaborations, and I'd like to do more down in the future.
And the song "My Religion Is Love," you wrote that on ketamine?
Yeah, my buddy gave me some ketamine. I'd never tried it, and I did it more than I should have. And my wife was reading out of this book about like Tesla and all this stuff, and I was just like, "Keep reading!" And I started writing page after page after page of lyrics. And then about a month later, I decided to pull those out, and I'm like, "I'm going to use some of these words. Some of this shit's pretty trippy." And Dave Moe had sent me a song with no lyrics, of course. He sent me 13 actually in the beginning, and I used that particular track and made those lyrics fit.
Did you write all the lyrics on the record?
What's that?
You wrote all the lyrics on that record?
Yeah, except for the three covers that are on the album, I wrote all the lyrics.
Nice. And the vinyl has what? One less song than the CD?
Yeah, we had to take something off, and I didn't want to take off an original, so we removed my Ramones cover, which is a bummer because it's one of my favorite songs.
Nice.
My Ramones cover, "Chasing the Night's" one of my favorite songs on the album, but we had to remove one of the covers, and I didn't want to get rid of "Baby Please Don't Go" because we just made a music video for that, of course. And "Mother Under My Wheels," my friend Lisa Leathers, who's going to be performing that with me when I get to the Midwest in March. So we decided just to take off the Ramones cover.
Speaking of that, like you said, you do have like what, 2 shows coming? I know you have some stuff going on that we talked about, like live-wise.
Yeah, the band Super 88 out of Peoria, Illinois is kind enough to back me up for some gigs, and they're going to be on the bill as well as Super 88 at the Raccoon Motel in Davenport, Iowa, March 14th, and we're going to be at Livewire in Chicago, March 15th.
Nice. And so are you writing new music now? What do you have going on besides what you've recorded?
Right now, we are producing the Wax Fruit video with West Beach from the Plasmatics. TC Tolliver is not going to be on it if he's got stuff to do, but me and West Beach have been actively working on that with Richard Allin from the Church of Rock YouTube channel. And I'm also going to be working on the Zeller Dweller music video coming up after that. And we're also doing the Plasmatics tribute. Me and West Beach are actively working on that. And besides that, I'm just actively promoting my Bloody F.Mess official YouTube channel and my The Church of Rock YouTube channel.
Yeah, actually, before we let you go, I want to talk about your YouTube channel, because your YouTube channel is, like I said, is killer, man. And I actually was watching it this morning, and you were talking about, me and you were going back and forth maybe yesterday about E-Trope. And you saw what, Slayer, it was 84 with, was E-Trope, and that was Haunting the Chapel, right?
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, and this is all the stuff that's on your channel, which is, I mean, what is there? The one was it Juan Crocier, when you walked in on him and a groupie in a trailer, you were like, I don't know if you were tripping at the show or whatnot, man, but your channel has some great stories on it, dude. And like, I mean, I'm trying to think of something. I actually try to go listen when I see something pop up, man. I always try to check them out. What gave you the idea? Because you could write a book, man. I mean, in a way, I'm kind of thinking, like, I know me and you've talked off record about, like, I think you should probably do this and that. But a book, man, I think that, you would have some tales to tell.
Well, the thing about doing a book in this day and age is that, for one, I'd have to write the book, which would probably just be a nightmare. For two, I'd have to find a distributor, because even when I put records out, it's always a matter of how do I get this shit to people? It's not as easy as it seems, and it costs a lot of money to publish a book too. And these days, with just like music sharing, it's just easier for me to do stories as it is to write a book. And this way I can send out a video and anybody in any corner of the world can have it, instead of me having to try to get the book to everybody in the world. So this channel is absolutely my is my book. So I'm going to keep telling more personal stories. But I put one up the other day that people freaked out on, and I lost a bunch of subscribers, so I had to unlist it. So what I'm going to do is I'm starting a Patreon account, and the people that join my Patreon account, I'm going to tell all my X-rated and all my stories that the normal politically correct crowd can't handle, because people are just so sensitive today. So, you know, I'm just going to try to respect people's feelings that don't want to hear about that creepy stuff. But I'm going to save all my really, really creepy stories. Like you've touched on a couple today for my Patreon, but I've got some great ones, dude. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, your channel, I try to watch it. If I see a video go up, I try to check it out, you know. And I mean, you know, you go back. There was one where you were hanging out with Jakey Lee, smoking a joint, I believe. I don't know if that was the acid one or not. I just listened to one today where you were like driving around Zach Wild. I mean, you got some, you know, some crazy stories from back then. And you lost, actually, that's something I didn't touch on. You lost, so you had a hell of a lot of shit, right? You had a lot of music memorabilia. You had a lot of memories that burnt up in the fires. Can you explain about that?
I was getting ready to start a pop culture museum here at this store here in Ashland, Oregon, and I had hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of every single thing I'd ever collected in my entire life, because we were living in the space of the size of like probably your kitchen and your bathroom combined for like 6 years. So we had these two huge storage units just stuffed full of vinyl, just amazing amounts of autographed stuff, you know, Charles Manson's hair, G.G. Allen's fingernails and hair, like pieces of the TV set that Wendy O. Williams used to break on stage, like handwritten letters from like Grace Slick from the Jefferson Starship and Airplane, like, you know, stuff from Mr. Rogers, just crazy stuff. And it all burned. Like everything I ever owned in my life burned, except for what was in my apartment at the time, and there wasn't much there. So clothing, all my freaking photographs of my entire family history, ashes of family members, like you name it, man. All kinds of crazy shit burned that, you know, it sucks, but what are you going to do?
And that was what? That was the fires from, was that 2020?
Yeah, it was the 2020 Alameda fires, and you'll never convince me that it wasn't the same assholes that started the Maui fires, because I've done my research, and this fire started in Northern California and went all the way up through Oregon. I believe it was direct energy weapons.
Wow, damn. Nice. And I always, you know, I know you lost a lot of stuff in that, man. That is a shame. But yeah, you know, I mean, Bloody, we really definitely, like I said, I've been to your channel, man. I definitely recommend anybody who has not checked it out. It's, what is it? It's under, I know you have a Church of Rock channel on YouTube, but you also have, it's Bloody F.Mess is what yours is under, right? The ones you tell all the tales.
Yeah, the one with all my stories that you're talking about is Bloody F.Mess Official. And then the one with all the music archives and all my interviews, which there's like almost 1,000, that is called The Church of Rock, all one word.
Who's the most difficult guy you ever interviewed, Bloody? Because I know you've dealt with a lot of people, man. I know you have like, you have shitloads of interviews you've done.
Probably Keith Morris from the Circle Jerks, who I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan.
He was difficult to deal with.
Yeah, he was a dick, man, and I don't know what his problem is, but we interviewed him the first time. He was as cool as can be. The second time, he was just a complete wank. He would not answer the question. He just kept talking about something that had nothing to do with my question. And then when I was online talking about it about a month after that with somebody, I said, yeah, Keith Morris was on my show a couple times. He pipes in, yeah, 2 times too many. I'm like, fuck off. You circle jerks aren't all that, bro. Believe me. Not in my book. Black Flag was way better.
You saw Black Flag, I take it?
I never got to saw Black Flag, man. No, I got to meet Bill Stevenson, the drummer, when he was in the Descendants. I got to interview him once.
Yeah, Bill seems like he would be cool. I was a big Descendants fan growing up. Man, Bloody, we really thank you for hanging out tonight with us, man. I mean, you know, we've been trying to get this, you know, it took us an hour to get on tonight, like we said, but it worked out.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys being patient with me, man. I'm not the very most technical guy in the world, and everyone that knows me knows that about me, but hey, it worked out. And there's a couple things I talked about on your show that I've never mentioned to anybody ever.
Nice. Yeah,
you have to figure out what that is.
Yeah, what are you updating your site daily?
I
your
try to.
YouTube?
I try to do it as much as possible. I'm trying to do 4 or 5 days a week because it's really building. And I think the more content I put up, it seems like the more people that are attracted to the channel. And, you know, it's a rocker's got to make a living doing something, man. And so I'm trying to build it.
Yeah, it's like I said to everybody, man. Definitely check it out. It's definitely it's a great channel, man. Like I said, I try to catch it all the time. You know, and Bloody, man. Is there anything else you got going? Anything else you want to mention before we let you go? We're going to say goodbye to you when we hang up here. We're actually going to end the show. We ended it with the public access national anthem, but we're actually going to end it with "Hungover and Stone" tonight on the way out because it seems like a good tune to end the show on.
I appreciate you guys having me on and taking the time and having such a well-versed interview ready. You had a lot of information. You seem to know exactly what you're talking about. And that's the best kind of interview is when people know the history instead of acting like they do and asking questions that are awkward. You knew exactly, you know, to go right for the gut. Perfect interview, bro. And there's I've got a brand new music video that I'd like to direct people to check out. It's on YouTube. It's under Bloody Mess and Dave Moe, M-O-E, This Creepy Little Town. It's my brand new music video done by Mike Garrett. Mike Garrett's a killer video producer, and it's probably the best of my, well, not the best, but it's probably right up there with one of my very best music videos.
And you said you're doing something for Zeller Dweller next, right?
Well, we're doing Wax Fruit right now, and then I'm going to move on to Zeller Dweller.
Nice, man. Like I said, the new record, man, it's definitely a diverse. It's definitely different from the sixth grade field trip. But everything you've done has kind of been always different. And the Hungover and Stoned record, like I said, there's a lot of great stuff on that too, man. And you know, you've done the Vaynes were great. There's just yeah, man. And Bloody, I've known you forever. I appreciate you. You've always been cool when I've talked to you, man. And you know, we'll definitely maybe we'll convince one day we'll get you to tell a story. We'll do a story a month here of yours, man. We could plug it on the episode with your YouTube channel because you have, like I said, man, I could just sit all day and listen to some of these tales when you post them.
Well, I appreciate that, Tony. It's good to meet you guys and see you in person. And thanks for putting up with my technical inefficiencies earlier.
It's no problem, dude, man. Ed, where can people find us?
We're on YouTube too.
We're on YouTube too. We just don't have video.
This was the easiest interview for me because you know so much more, about Bloody than I do. And
since 14 years old, man, that's why.
Yeah, dude, I've been hearing about this. Listen, we do a lot of interviews. I've been hearing about you for months, so this is like easy for me. I was just over here. I could show you. I've been fucking drawing. I've been drawing fucking pictures, and because I've been listening to this shit and just going, this is fucking. Like, for me, I feel like I'm entrapped in my own YouTube vortex. This was fucking awesome. But yeah, we're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere there's podcasts. thetampamorgue at gmail.com to send us hate mail, love mail, questions, whatever you want. We don't give a shit. And yeah, that's where you find us. Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, good to meet you, Ed. Thanks to the Tampa Morgue. I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate anyone that supports my music or my YouTube channels.
Yeah, man. Like I said, Blood, I've listened to you for a long time, man. I'm old too now. We're all getting old. And like I was telling my wife, I was like, this episode was kind of easy for me because I was like, man, I remember being in high school and the sixth grade field trip started going around. And, that was an exciting time. You didn't have the internet. You just got these things. And I remember when I first put that record on, I was like, what the fuck? Because I got it from Northwinds. And then I heard the other side. I'm like, what is this? And then still jamming it, man. So, Bloody,
awesome.
Me and you will definitely keep in touch, and we'll say goodbye to you on the way when we hang up here. And we're gonna play because I think it's the perfect ending to the show. Hungover and Stoned off the '94 record, man. Anything about really fast? What made you do that? Like that song, man. What was that? Because that was totally different than anything you had done really at that time with the Skabs.
Well, just because we were kind of closet outlaw country fans, and we wanted to freak people out and do something the opposite of shock rock. And then, of course, in 2006, when the Transfusions did that album, we re-recorded Hungover and Stoned, and I added a third verse. So that's my favorite version of Hungover and Stoned is the Transfusions version, but I like them both.
There you go. Well, we're going to play the Hungover and Stoned right now. Bloody, thank you so much. Like I said, we'll be saying goodbye to you here in a minute when we're clicking off, but everybody else, thanks for listening. This is Hungover and Stoned from Bloody Mess and the Skabs from the 1994 record on Black and Blue Records. Bloody, anything else?
Thanks again, my guys, and appreciate it very much.
Okay, everybody else, here's this Hungover and Stoned from Bloody Mess and the Skabs. And we'll see you next week on the Tampa Morgue. And everybody who doesn't know, Chris Reifert last week was on, and we had Gene from Angel Corpse on, and Perdition Temple. Those episodes are all in the backlog. You can find another 50 episodes back there too, and a bunch of interviews. Blaine Cook from The Accused, just tons of bands. Snowy Shaw from King Diamond, Merciful Fate. Everybody who listens, we appreciate it. This is Bloody Mess and the Skabs with Hungover and Stoned.